The story opens with a man reflecting on his life. After graduating, he took a job in a big city for the last decade. Going to work every morning was shook up by a train full of passengers, a job where perseverance was judged and he was given more and more duties, so his time in the office increased even more. Even on weekends that he rarely gets off, he loses interest in reading his favorite historical novel. Just before falling asleep, our main character reflected on how his life was boring and he was missing his peaceful and beautiful hometown. When he opened his eyes, he felt strange. His hands were small and his body shrank. He tried to look outside from the window, which was a part of the room that he had no idea whose. When he looked at it, he saw a whole different world in front of him. Someone was calling a person named Van. It was Van's maid, Till. She came into the room with panic, telling him that it was dangerous out there. He asked who she was, but Till was confused. He said that the view outside was great and he moved because the garden was so beautiful. Till was shocked and even more confused at how he was using such difficult words and how he could pronounce them correctly because he was 2 years old. Van was not expecting this. Even though he was about to hit 30, he was now a 2-year-old kid. He was a corporate slave office employee who lived in a small one-room apartment in the city, and this body and maid were not his. He was trying to figure out if he was reincarnated or dead. He also had the memories from this life. He asked if her name was Till, his private maid, and Till confirmed him. He also knew that his name was Van Nyfertio. While Till was praising him for being smart, he started counting his family members like his father Duke Jalpa Fertio and his older brothers Mercia, Yard, and Sesto. There was one thing he didn't know though, he didn't know where he was. In the dining room, all the members of the Fertio family were eating. Father, the head of the Duke family Jalpa Pool Ati Fertio, first son Mercia Elago Fertio, second son Yard Guide, and the third son Sesto. While the family was eating their meal in silence, Van was surrounded by the maids and seemed like he was impressing them by eating his vegetables. It felt like he was in a hostess bar and he was a VIP customer. He still had memories from when he was in Japan and reincarnated in this world. Although he still doesn't understand and doesn't feel that this is real, he decided to do his best. His brother Yard seemed nervous. Their father Jalpa asked him what he learned today. At dinner he would ask how the day's activities to his son, and this was a daily routine at home. He wondered if this was a custom among nobles. They distanced themselves from their children. In the morning they do nothing, and during the day they learn sword techniques and education according to their age. Jalpa then asked Sesto about his day. After learning his too, he asked Van what he was planning to do that day. Van tried to come up with the best answer and stated that since he didn't know anything, he would study the history and culture of this country. Everyone, including Jalpa, was too stunned to speak for a moment. Jalpa then burst into laughter, saying how smart his kid was, even though he was the last son of his wife Mira, who spoiled him. Jalpa was sure he had strong fire magic just like him and Mira, and stated that he was looking forward to the coming-of-age ceremony when he was 8 years old. In a world filled with magic like here, it was important to know what kind of magic one possessed and what was suitable for them. And there were 2 requested noble families. Basic 4 elemental magic of fire, water, air, and earth, which was devoted to attack and to protect family and residents, or healing magic, and people who had talent other than that would suffer humiliation. His father and brother, all of them, were compatible with 4 magic elements. In his opinion, any other magic would be useful depending on how it's used. The Fertio family was a noble with a specialization in military power that existed within a large military country. They also had pride, especially in fire type, which was strong in attack. This world should have a civilization that was developing on par with the medieval and early modern worlds. But with magic making things easier, if there was a spread of gunpowder, it would be very serious. The existing weapons were all general weapons such as swords, spears, bows, and arrows. Then the very important thing was magic. This world also had 3 continents and countless islands. And right now he was in a large country located in the southern part of the Grant continent, which was in the west, Scuderia Kingdom. The royal family here existed for 300 years and had been steadily expanding its country slowly. The current king, too, led the nobles who had fighting power and would attack the small country to get the territory of the new country. It seemed that even his father at that time was promoted from count to duke because of that. He asked Till if there was only one port where ships sailed, because if passing through the deep sea, the ship might be attacked by giant monsters. Even though passing through the strait would be difficult if not using a narrow location. Till explained that other than humans there were also various other races like elves, dwarves, and beasts. But because they built their own culture in the countryside, it was rare to see them. The maids were pretty surprised that his words were very difficult to know. One of them asked if he wanted to take a nap, and he said that he was asking those because he wanted to know a lot. He wondered if they were tired. As they said they were fine, Van continued to ask about the magic equipment. Till stated that some magic stones, minerals, and crystals could store magic power, and it could make magic tools based on magic compatibility. After he learned about magic, he decided to ask the main question to Till later, which was prodigy. A 49-year-old butler, Esparta, came and asked how far he had remembered. He knew Van was 2 years old and he learned easy letters and numbers. Esparta had been serving his father for many years and he seemed capable. He had not spoken to him until that moment, which made him a little bit sweaty. As he was having trouble answering him, Esparta repeated his question, asking what he remembered so far. He said that it would be okay if he asked him because he couldn't write. He asked him what was 2 plus 3 and he gave the correct answer. He then asked him to subtract 2 from 7 and Van gave the right answer once again. After a minute of silence, Esparta stated that he would be teaching Van himself twice a week from now on. This experience was like hell for Van. What he was teaching him wasn't something a 2-year-old learns, and the learning material was also too much. Esparta was shocked at how genius this 2-year-old boy was. Even though it was pretty hard, he could now read and write and could learn many things such as the noble system, territorial unification, and rules, but he was still trying to understand what a 2-year-old was supposed to do. He learned various things all the time during those 2 years. With a wooden stick in his hands, he was even trying to learn swordsmanship. It felt like he was playing with Maiko in the tatami room. While playing with Till, she wins their battle, and the other maids seem upset that she dared to win against Van and ask him to punish Till. The punishment idea sounded good. Till started to panic, as usually doing something like that would be a huge deal. But Van just flicked her forehead. Even though training was only half a year, every day he learned sword techniques, and after passing the age of 5, he was able to fight by matching the older apprentices called young warriors. With a fairly easy rule, just by hitting the opponent first with a stick, he was the one who would win. And unexpectedly, he was quite deep into it because it was so interesting. As he had participated in lots of different combat sports like judo and karate, he combined those with his sword technique. He would win against his opponents. However, since his opponents were children, the attacks were monotonous after all, and he neither had the skills nor had experience to win against Van. Unlike his brothers like Yard and Sesto, Van was talking to the low-caste people, and they seemed to like him. Deputy Chief of the Knights Group D came and wanted to ask something. He wanted to see his hands. D noticed that he had no peeling skin. His hands were so soft and his nails were long. Van didn't seem to understand what he was doing. He said that although he practiced every night, there was no evidence of that. Van said that he was not practicing at night because he was very busy studying. When he was free, he would practice, and he also liked his sword. D heard that Esparta issued an order to make him study 3 times more than usual. Van now understands why there were so many lessons. D was just excited that he would be the one teaching him about the swords. D said that Van should prefer the path of the sword as he had a natural talent and offered him to do training based on his body. He seemed so excited and proud to be the one who would make Van the one swordsman in this kingdom. Seeing his serious face, Van stated that he loved both studying and the sword, so he wanted to learn both well. There was nothing D could do, so he accepted. Van asked him to teach him kindly, but that was a big lie. He made him practice to almost death and didn't let him rest even a little bit. Even when he found a way to rest, he suggested he rest while squatting. Van considered him as a devil, but after this statement he was sure he was just a big idiot guy. Till came and praised him for fighting every day. Even though it was hard for him because he was reborn, every day was so much fun compared to his old life. The satisfaction he never felt in his previous life, and in his current life, he became the greatest noble family. He was dedicated to enjoying a pleasant life like this. 3 years later, it had been a few years since he was called a prodigy. Suddenly a man was going to swing his sword at Van, ending his lovely life once more. The next chapter starts with us looking at Van's 6-year-old self, that is, 2 years ago. He recalled one of the days he spent out. He thought there were many kinds of people where he lived. He never got tired of seeing that crowd. Van was thinking 6-year-old had lived on Earth for almost 30 years, and still had memories of it. In that world, he was reincarnated as the 4th son of a noble family, and was called a prodigy. Every day he received lessons and training in swordsmanship like it was hell. It looked like 12-year-old child soldiers could not beat 6-year-old Van. He could learn things like adults learned, which was clearly too quirky. Van's personal maid, Till, told him that he was able to master swordsmanship so cleverly like he was a genius. That way, she said, maybe he could catch up with his brothers and become the head of the family. In politics, the weak would fall prey to the strong. One of the strongest should have been the head of the family. But Van's life this time was completely different. Money, status, honor, power would all belong to a family head. Therefore, while having a very promising sibling in the future, as he thought, trying to kill to prepare faster was a sight often seen in aristocratic society, and fortunately Van could not say that he was on good terms with his brothers. He thought they would not hesitate to kill him. In other words, regardless of whether he would actually become the head of the family or not, if he stood out, he would most likely be killed. At that rate, he wouldn't be able to enjoy his life in peace till he wanted to go to play outside. That was why he would change from being a prodigy to an ordinary child. He had decided to become a player, and for now he thought he would start with shopping. Van went to Marie Company, which was a large company with branches all over the kingdom. Van told Till that it was big like Costco. Then suddenly a man was coming with a child's hands tied and yelling at him. The child was wearing ragged clothes. Van wondered what was happening. The man who held his son's rope told people around that it was not a show. The man said he was free to do anything to his own child and his debt was in his name, so he came to sell him as a slave. According to the law of slavery, there were only two types of slaves allowed, namely slaves for debt and slaves for committing crimes. However, long ago in poor families, the children who were left and not fed would be sold as slaves and used as living expenses. The father said he used him for the debt transaction system, and he made him a debt slave. Van understood that the reason why he could not take his eyes off and make a sound, even with such a terrifying appearance, was maybe because slavery was quite common. Everyone was used to seeing that kind of scene, which was actually a very bad system for Van. Then a woman noticed Van and asked him if he might have been the son of His Majesty. Till said he was that famous prodigy. The woman said her name was Rosalie and thanked him for his patronage. She said as she thought he was the rumored Van, then welcomed him to Mare Company. She asked him what he was looking for, and then told him that they would show and prepare anything for him. He asked Rosalie how much the child as a slave would cost. She said he was about 8 years old and then asked his father what his magic power was. The father said his magic ability was stealing. In that case, she said it could not be more than 3 big silver coins. The father got angry and told them in the shop each slave was valued at 5 large silver coins or more. He said a slave could last a long time, it was only natural that it was more expensive. Rosalie said any shop would buy less than half the selling price even though that kid should only be given 3 big silver coins. She said if women were to be multiplied, men and their small bodies were of no use. Including the maintenance costs, it would have been cheaper. While the father was getting angry, Van told him to wait and then asked him if he was his son, to treat him gently. The father told him to shut up and to not butt in. Rosalie also got angry and told him to not be stupid. She told him that they didn't need to buy it. She asked if he wanted to sell, even if it was just a lie to that kid. The father said they all always fooled him. He had no intention of selling it to her either. He pulled his son and told him that they were going to another shop. The son was really hurt. Suddenly Van stopped them and told them he would buy him 5 silver coins. He was trying to be calm and was thinking he had a feeling that if he just got carried away, the child would be killed. The father asked Van where the money was. Till told Van that she only prepared gold coins. Rosalie told Till to exchange the money inside and wanted them to leave it to her. Rosalie and Till went to pay the father. Meanwhile, Van was trying to talk to the son. He asked him if he was all right and if he could stand up. He told the son that his name was Van and then asked his name. His name was Kamshin. Van told him now he was free and could go wherever he wanted. Till asked Van if he bought the child as a slave, however. Van just thought that he should have helped him. Till was afraid that his father would do something to him, so Van thought if he got lost alone on the road it would be troublesome. Moreover, he didn't know anything, and Van could not be that irresponsible. He asked Kamshin if there was somewhere he could go. Kamshin was silent, and then he asked him if he wanted to come to his house. He said he thought there was some work he could do to help out at home. One of the other boys told Van that he would be allowed by His Majesty to bring an unknown child into the mansion, unless he took him as his slave. Van asked him if he was okay with that. Kamshin nodded his head and said okay. Then Van told him to have a look at the clothes first, and from now on, as they would be together, he wanted them to dress up cool. Rosalie told them before that they had to make a slave contract first. Rosalie took Kamshin's hand and then a mark appeared on his hand. Rosalie said it was the mark of a slave contract and only slaves would be marked unless the contract was broken. She was a contract magician. She said as for the contract fee, this time she would make it free since that was his first visit. Van thanked Rosalie and she was shocked that she got thanks from a noble. Rosalie showed them the way and assisted them. Rosalie asked Van at first if he wanted to choose clothes for Kamshin. Van took his hand and requested him to come and buy some clothes for him. He was kind of surprised. They went to a store and Van took him to a good part of the store. Van chose a side and didn't think clothes like that would not feel weird. However, Rosalie told him it was made of very good cloth and then showed him another one and told him that one was generally used by slaves. Van said he didn't mean to see him as a slave and the outfit he chose was pretty good for him. After that, Van said he would go to buy some underwear and shoes too. Rosalie thanked him and told him that there were nice shoes to match the outfit. Van recalled the day and thought that was the situation on the first day he went out. He bought a slave. Now he thought everything would be fine. Then Kamshin came to Van and told him that Deputy Commander D was looking for him. Van handed him a cookie and asked him for that, telling him that he was not there. However, Kamshin thought he might have already found out, then took the cookie and ate it. Van realized he was not wearing gloves. Kamshin told him that was not necessary. Van asked if he felt bad when people looked at it. He said it was a sign of bonding with him. It should have been shown instead. He said it was not something that could be shown like that and bought gloves for him. He immediately put on the gloves and told Van that he would wear them as he brought them. Kamshin went back to Deputy Commander D and told him that Van didn't seem to be there. Deputy Commander D was surprised to hear that he said some witnesses said that Vanna entered that room earlier. Kamshin told him that it was probably just an illusion due to his strong feelings for Van. Then Commander D yelled and asked him why there was food left in his mouth. Until now there was nothing left, he said. He said now he got Kamshin and told him that he was disregarding the orders of the Deputy Soldier Commander. That was very courageous indeed. He said he was Van's slave. Commander D told him that he would say it again, then told him that he had gotten a lot of guts and told him to replace Van, let the commander train him, and told him that he should have felt honored. Van was secretly listening to them and thought what a pity for Kamshin. Then he started to think thus, he had the habit of being lazy. He thought there must have been an achievement for going from a prodigy to an ordinary child. He thought if Kamshin gave up, he would take his place while looking at him and Deputy Commander D leaving. In the next chapter, people were talking about Van's birthday. He was turning 8, which meant it was time for the magic appraisal ceremony. They were really looking forward to the result of the ceremony as he was an extraordinary prodigy. Fertio's family's sons were all people who had magic compatibility with the 4 magic elements fire and wind, so there was no doubt Van would also be compatible with fire magic. However, in the ceremony, Van had no magic element that matched him. He had a creation magic. People who possess it are the most unfortunate magic users among all types of magic. That magic was also called alchemy. Preparing materials such as iron and copper, working with images in your head, and making swords and accessories consumes quite a lot of magic power and can't make anything further. Using a large amount of magic power to make weapons and decorations could also be made by people who have other magic compatibility. Neither an inventor nor a blacksmith need any magic talent to make it. Van's life was not targeted by his brothers in the power struggle. He had done many things to lower his rank for 2 years, and there was no way a low rank could affect his magic compatibility. The things that a noble needs are 4 magic elements: fire, water, wind, and earth. In the Fertio family, those with strong fire magic or even healing magic compatibility were especially expected. The eldest son, Mercia, had wind magic, and he worked harder than anyone and held the position of the family head representative. However, just because he had wind magic compatibility, he was despised by the second and third sons who had fire magic. Even so, among nobles, magic was very important. His father, Yalpa, didn't think it was possible to give birth to a creation magic user as his wife, and he had strong fire magic users. Van's mother, who had a weak body in contrast to the strength of her magic power, died after giving birth to him, and that's why his father had high expectations from him. Jalpa then took out his sword and stated that since he was young, he had shown a strange talent, and he was a fool for expecting much from him. Therefore, he said that the Duke family would not be held back. He did not want anyone to know about this matter, so he said that he had to kill him. Van didn't know what to do, and he couldn't even move. However, Mercia, the eldest son, protected Van, and when Yalpa asked what was the matter, he said that there was an area within the Duke family's territory that he was currently occupying. However, due to its location, it was completely undeveloped. There was also a village in that remote area. He suggested leaving that area to Van. It was part of the territory Mercia got when he was promoted to the Duke, and it was also the place where Count Ferdinand, whose territory had been reduced, sent knights to be judged. In other words, if he left that village to Van, even if placing a knight right next to Count Ferdinand, there would be no problem. Besides, the newly acquired territory still had some loyalty to his Duke's family, and if a member of the Duke's family was assigned there, even if it was only in appearance, it would be good. Yalpa seemed pleasant with this idea. He said that he was going to leave him in that village as a feudal lord. He told him to get out of there as soon as he finished preparations, and left there after telling Mercia that he finally found worth in him. The moment they left, Mercia kneeled in front of his brother and apologized. He couldn't stand to see his little brother having a hard time getting creation magic. He had always been mistreated by his father and brothers because of his wind magic attribute. He was okay with Van hating him for giving unreasonable advice like that. Van wasn't even close to hating him. Mercia helped him, and if it wasn't him, Van would be killed or arrested, or his tongue might even be torn out and he would most likely be made a slave. In a desperate situation like this, he promised to not waste the chance his brother gave him. Mercia was continually impressed by Van's intellectual brilliance and often found himself pondering where Van had picked up such eloquent vocabulary. He was convinced that Van considered matters with a depth that surpassed his own. From the very beginning, Esparta and Till were always eager to share updates about Van's achievements and growth. The Duke family had decided to relocate Van to a distant locale, an endeavor that was expected to be quite challenging. Nonetheless, Van was prepared to give it his all. Mercia expressed his acceptance of the situation, stating that he was content as long as it benefited Van. They exchanged a firm handshake and Van expressed his gratitude to his brother. Back at the family home, Till was visibly upset, vehemently protesting that even without magical abilities, Van remained a wise and respected nobleman. She found the decision to send him to a remote village completely preposterous. Despite this, the role of a feudal lord held its allure. With a gag order in place, Van reassured her, appreciating her concern, and surprisingly confessed his excitement about the new chapter waiting for him in the village, a reaction Till had not anticipated. Van realized that remembering the contrast between ordinary life and the rigidities of aristocratic expectations meant that he could now consider himself a free man. Assuming the duties of a feudal lord in a small village would likely afford him plenty of leisure, prompting him to think about how he should spend this newfound free time. Reflecting on the painful memories of being left by his father and brothers, he resolved to turn the village into his cherished retreat, a place where he could live comfortably and joyfully. In the next chapter, nobles spout all kinds of rhetoric to make themselves feel proud, but in the end, their priority is to protect themselves, not the kingdom, even if it means neglecting the security of their people. In other words, nobles would look down on civilians, especially adventurers. In this chapter, a group of people were discussing their mission to guard a noble's child. As they can't deal with royalty, they had to accept this. The biggest one among them asked why he accepted the request, and he explained that it was because he had no choice. Van came like sunshine, smiled at them politely, and introduced himself. Ordo, who seemed like the group leader, was shocked at how cute Van was, and he also responded politely. Van started to praise Ordo, and he noticed his weapon, which seemed pretty big and heavy. The other members of this adventurer group also seemed interested in Van, and Van was amazed by them. After meeting everyone, Van left. They all seemed pretty pleasant, the fact that the person they would be escorting looked like an ordinary adorable child. But Ordo still warned them to be careful to not pat his head. Meanwhile, Van was with Kamshin and they were preparing for the trip. He told him to put his luggage in those 3 horse carriages. He explained that this escort could not borrow carriages from the Knight Army, therefore Mercia hired adventurers. At first, they were only going to send a single carriage for him, but Mercia did not let that happen. Till was also going with them. She was dedicated to serving Van everywhere, so she was also going. The information that he possesses magic other than the 4 basic elements was only known by a few people. But he can't stop people from talking. Dee also came to accompany him and promised to plunge his swords into anyone who gets in Van's way. Van asked if he was allowed to request an escort from the Knight Army, and Dee didn't know about this either. He told the others to hurry up and get everything ready. Esparta came and stated that it was a little bit early for Jalpa, but he would be retiring soon. His children were all grown up, so there should be no problem with him coming with Van to the countryside to relax. Esparta worked alongside his father for years, so it would not be easy to let him go, and it would be difficult to replace such a trusted servant. But still, Esparta was going to watch Van's studies while he was enjoying his retirement, which made him pretty nervous. Van noticed that everyone brought so many things as if they weren't going to a village, but still he was grateful that there were so many people by his side. Dee with his high spirits and Espada with his extensive knowledge. Till asked if something happened, seeing his weird smile. Van smiled like a normal person and then stated that he was just glad everyone was coming with him and thanked them. Till mentioned that many maids like her wanted to join him, but only she was allowed because she asked Mercia for this chance. She said that Mercia seemed to be busy and didn't talk much with the maids. Yard and Sesto don't treat them properly, but Van was different. He used to greet them every day. He gave them treats, and when they cleaned, he would come to help them. The maids who participated in sword training also liked Van. Van felt embarrassed and told Kamshin that if he didn't like it, he could just stay in the kingdom. The slave agreement could be changed or cancelled, and if he asked Mercia, he would grant it. Kamshin told Van that he had decided to devote his life to him forever. Van got super embarrassed, so he tried to joke around asking him if he liked him that much, but Kamshin responded with all seriousness that he liked him and adored him. Now it was time to go. Van was thinking that his dad wanted to get him out of town without anyone knowing. He had to erase his existence as much as possible. He thought he spent a lot of time in that town in the last 2 years, but now, it feels lonely. While they were about to leave, a girl approached Van and called out to him. He said she was the daughter of a guard he had met several times. She asked Van if he was going somewhere. He asked where she heard it. Then the girl pointed to something, and when Van looked at it, he saw a man was behind them with his horses, which he thought was so embarrassing. The soldier said, as per instructions from Mr. D, they would be sad if Van left town like a thief on the run. He said at the least they wanted to give him a proper send-off. The soldier told Van that D was sleeping in the carriage, so when he was awake, he would let him know. Then D awakened and screamed that the 4th prince of the kingdom, Van, was there. He ordered people to clear the road to let him through, and if any officer asked permission, he would check up on him. People approached and asked Van where he was going, wanting him to come home soon and asking him if he was going to school in the royal capital. Van said goodbye to everyone and thought he didn't think that they cared so much about him. Meanwhile, Till got emotional and started to cry. A man approached Van and told him that the beef barbecue was ready. Van thought they had to pass through 2 cities, but before that, they set up camp for the first time. He thought in his previous life he had the experience of living in a car, but this was his first time camping in that dangerous world full of monsters. This time, he asked 2 groups of adventurers to escort him. The man who brought the beef barbecue was named Orthosheet. He seemed to be the leader and a talented adventurer who had been an adventurer for more than 20 years, so he was used to interacting with clients. Even in the face of an 8-year-old like Van, as he thought, could speak decisively. Van thanked him for the beef and for taking care of him, then he requested Ortho to take some time to rest. Till was aware that even adventurers could understand Van's kindness. She thought if Van became a master like her, they could talk about 100 more amazing things. Van was thinking after leaving the town and crossing 2 cities he camped several times. He reviewed what they had seen. They saw 4 more cities, big and small, where they rested a whole day. He was thinking about the fact that the progress was slow because they had a lot of luggage. After 2 weeks, they were walking between 50 and 100 kilometers per day, and now they had covered 500 to 1,000 kilometers. The kingdom was vast. In Japan, it was like going through 3 or 4 prefectures, but he wondered what the actual distance was. Till told Van that they would soon arrive at the village finally. Van thought it was like when a workplace had a new boss transferred in. First impressions were important. While he was thinking, as soon as they entered the city, the carriage stopped and Van asked what was wrong. The man holding horses' ropes told them the situation was bad because the village was under attack. Van, along with all the adventurers, Kamshi and Till, were lined up in a circle and discussing what to do, and they all tried to make a plan. One said they might have been bandits or mercenaries on the run. One said anyone who felt weak and disputed could back off, and one said he was used to fighting. The village was surrounded by solid thick wooden walls, so it would be very difficult to use arrows. In front of the gate, armored troops stood guard, and behind them there was an army of magicians. Villagers could only take refuge like turtles. Dee wanted Van to let them join the battle because he believed if they all worked together, as he said, they could be defeated. Van thought the opponent's numbers should have most likely been 40 to 50 people. He asked himself if they should have fought in a situation where they didn't know what their opponent was like. Orthosheet said it was too dangerous. Dee told him that he knew it and there would be injuries and even death, but everybody could accept that. Ortho said he had his principles. They didn't accept requests that required sacrificing party members. He told him that if he became an adventurer, he must have often experienced those kinds of conditions. Ortho said if he had risked everyone's life, they would have been dead long ago. Dee turned to the crowd and asked if there was anyone who wanted to risk their life. He said the village became his lord's first territory, as did the villagers. If a crisis came, he said, he couldn't help but draw his sword. Ortho told Dee that he was indeed a good knight, but that had nothing to do with them. He said even if he paid more, it was all over if he died. He continued that at least he would like to request an escort for Van. He said depending on the situation, they may have escorted them. Esparta refused it and told them Dee would be more than willing to die for others. He stated that Dee alone was able to face over 30 people, including an army of mages, and he said he thought that would be 50-50. He said if Dee died this time, no one would rule the village, and he said they would not fight. Even if I died first, Esparta said. He was still a 4-element mage. He said it was where the open area was and they could see their fighting power. Ortho was surprised that he could fight. Esparta told everybody that they didn't have to take any risks. First, he would build a barrier wall. Adventurers had to attack from behind the barrier from a distance. When the enemies turned their gazes, at least it was his plan, their chances of winning would be high if the surprise attacks were repeated. Ortho asked if their magic power attacks could be prevented because he believed that there was no way to prevent them other than shooting them with arrows. Van said one cart was lined with iron at all vital points and it was fine to get into the cart and escape after making the first surprise attack. He said their only goal was to distract the enemy first. He asked if Esparta stayed behind and confronted them. Esparta approved it and told him that as bait, he had to keep attacking from behind the wall, otherwise Dee and the others would die. Van didn't like to hear what Esparta said as he thought that he would surely die. Esparta finally said that he, as an old man, would be more useful. He wanted Van to allow his request, then Van would be the bait. They all looked at Van and were ready to listen to him. Till jumped in front of Van and she said no. She told Van that she opposed that proposition and would not allow them to do that. She said if Van became the bait, she would rather that she face the enemies. She said if they got distracted and attacked her, she was sure that they could win. Kamshin said she was coming too. Van said to let him remind them all again, then told everybody that he was in charge there. He said he would discuss that possibility, and Orto and others would escort him to the village. He said that didn't include fighting to save the village. He told Esparta, who had retired from a noble family, that he had contributed greatly to Van's family and must have not died in that place. He said Dee and the other knights' squad were serving his father, not him. He said he had to apologize to his father if anything happened to them. He turned to Till and told her that he already thought of her as his older sister who spent more time with him than anyone else, and didn't want to see someone as important as his sister die. Then it was Kamshin's turn. Van told Kamshin that he really liked his honesty even though he was Van's slave. He didn't have to die for him. Van told Kamshin that he was glad Kamshin was enjoying his life. Van started to think that for him, who was known as incompetent and got kicked out of a noble family, everyone who wanted to follow him was amazing and kind people, so he could not let them die. Just giving orders and doing nothing, he would never be like that damn boss. He, as the person in charge, must have put himself on the front line. He wanted to sincerely apologize to them. Van started to talk. He said first he would take the cart, and then advance from the front. He said he wanted everyone to attack from left and right. However, he said he told them not to forget that ranged attacks were the main attack there. He said if the enemy didn't retreat, they could run away and leave his body there. He stated that even if he got killed by the bandits if they didn't reveal his identity, the duchy wouldn't worry. Now, Ortho was okay with risking their lives. Van called Ortho a brat and told him that he said he would risk his life for the responsibility. Ortho told Van that if he said more than that, he would have had to scold the whole party. Puriel said honestly she had already been fooled by the nobles, and so far she had only seen nobles who could only talk. However, Van could remember their names one by one. That was why they wanted to risk their lives, as she said, and everyone felt the same way. Meanwhile, Van thought since Puriel was cute, he could remember her name. Dee said they were honorable knights who served the Fertio noble family. They would serve Van, who would be in charge of Fertio's future. He said they protect Van there and also protect the future of Fertio. Esparta said when the expulsion was complete, he wanted Van to remember his duties and responsibilities as a noble. He told Van that it would end in 3 days. However, Van found it so long. He said then he would modify the area and execute the plan he proposed. First, he planned to create a barrier and attack from a distance. Dee and his knights were attacking from the left side, and Ortho and his comrades were attacking from the right side. Those who didn't attack would wait there in case of an emergency to prepare to move. Dee screamed "Roger!" and they all started to execute the plan. When the wall was finished, Dee and his knights and Ortho and his comrades were ready to march on. Ortho thought that Butler Old Man was more suited as a magician as he could fight to some extent. If he was a fourth element mage, he couldn't just be a butler. However, he thought, maybe under certain circumstances. Ordo said if Ortho had refused the young master's request back then, he really would have sacrificed his life. Ortho approved and said he was very valuable. No noble like him should die so soon. Ortho said if it was possible, he wanted that boy to become a lord. He said these past 2 weeks the impression of nobility in Ortho had completely changed. It turned out that there was such a person in a noble family. He was very interested in Van. He said if Van was in trouble, he would go to help him. But still, Ortho didn't know much about Van. The lord of a small village, that being said, was troublesome and made Ortho want to refuse. He risked his life to fulfill his responsibility, even though he was pressured to come to such a place. Not only the territory and its inhabitants, but also the knights, retired butlers, maids, and slaves. After all, they lived as adventurers to propose such a strategy to protect everyone so that no one died. An 8-year-old would choose to die just for his own sake. Van was really a weird boy for Ortho. When Van returned, Kamshin and Till hugged him and thanked God. Kamshin thought if something happened to Van, he would be the first to become Van's shield and then catch up with Van. Van felt like they were like his own family. He told them that they were in a battle and that if there was something they could do, just do it. Van ordered them to get the medicines and medical treatment kits out of the cart. Puriel said if conditions get dangerous, they will help out. That was all. And they again screamed "Roger," then went back to fight. The bandits were at ease. The surrounding villages and settlements were falling apart and the attack on that small village was about to come to an end. While the bandits were planning what would they do after this attack, one of them got shot by an arrow, and it was from a wall behind them. Ortho and Dee were attacking at the same time, and Ortho was pretty amazed by Dee. The way he swung such a big sword with ease proved that he was the deputy knight commander of the Fertio family. The opponents were now terrified. They tried to run away and Ortho started chasing them until he noticed that one enemy was coming to them. He ordered everyone to stop him, but the long-range squad couldn't see the enemy coming because of the wall. He screamed that the enemy was coming, but it was a little late. Now Puriel was against the big guy. She had to use her magic, but she needed at least 10 seconds to start using it again and she couldn't make it. She was sure that she was going to be killed, but Van and Kamshin came. Puriel tried to explain to him that he was not an opponent that children could face, but they didn't listen to her and attacked him. After countless attacks, the enemy was defeated. Van stated that there was a chance the other opponents would attack here, so he told them to watch the front, while Puriel was trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with this boy. After a while, some of them managed to escape, but the attacking squad had been cleared and nobody got hurt. They got the best results. After that, Ortho explained that this request would be completed if they got half of the guest fee. He was a little interested in something other than the money, so he asked if he could stay there a bit. The others had to refuse this because they had to work in the next territory, and this request ended here, but they would come back again. However, there were a few who wanted to go with him. There were dense forests and mountains wound here, so he could hunt demons without accepting quests for a long time, or he might be able to earn some money. Puriel mentioned how she didn't think Van was a noble's kid as he didn't look like one. That was the reason Ortho wanted to stay here, because he wondered what a child like him would become. Van had a sharp wit, and it was unnatural even if he was educated as a noble. At first glance, he looked like a child from a noble family, but once he opened his mouth, that image would disappear. He was polite and gentle, but often looked like a cheerful and friendly child. There was no pretense of looking down on the commoner even though he was a noble. He admitted that he had never seen a noble like him, and the other members seemed to agree with him. They recalled that before the battle, Van said that his magic was not suitable for battle. In other words, back then he was willing to sacrifice himself for everyone, which was not a noble-like decision. Puriel mentioned that Van also helped her when she was cornered. His movements didn't seem like a kid's, and it was like a knight that had been to many battles. However, this kid wasn't even 10 yet. He was mysterious, but was better than any noble they had ever known. Ortho wanted to see what the territory would be like if that became a lord. He asked his team if they were also curious to see that, and they were all okay with it. Till was bothering Van, saying he should let Kamshin go first next time. Kamshin was brainstorming that he had to become even stronger. Puriel came and apologized for interrupting. She commented on how Van was making girls cry even at his age, but Van responded that he tried to be sincere with her, especially since she was important to him. Puriel asked him if he was an elf because their children don't age like they look. She was still having doubts about what to call him as he was a noble even though he didn't act like one. Van responded that Till took care of him since he was a baby, and he thought he must be a human being. She then asked where he learned how to use a sword. He pointed at D, saying that he was directly trained by that person, even though he wasn't very developed. He was trained to be stronger than himself. She then asked if his knowledge and wit came from Esparta, and Van confirmed her. Puriel then kneeled, stating that she could keep her life thanks to Van's actions and his sword's strength. She was much obliged and she would never forget this gift. Van smiled and stated that it was not a problem. Puriel thought it would be a big problem if it was because of a noble's charisma, but here they were. An adventurer had won over an adventurer's heart. Esparta informed Van that the villagers were gathering around the entrance. That was Van's first meeting, so he wanted to make a good impression. In the next scene, villagers were gathered, and Van introduced himself to everyone. He said that he was sent here by the Lord of Foltio, who had recently been ruling this territory, including this village. From now on, he would rule this village. The elder of the village, Rhonda, came and expressed his gratitude for helping this village and their people. Van mentioned the rumors about the owners and soldiers in this village who don't take command. He said that he wanted to protect this village, so henceforth he was going to be in charge. He hoped for their understanding and help. Ortho found this too formal but did not say anything. Rhonda invited him over to his house as an answer to his kindness. When they went inside, he explained that there used to be 150 people in this village. Half a year ago last month, the village was attacked by bandits. So now there were only 100 people, and today was the third attack. Van asked why they have become a main target for them in his opinion. He said that it was probably because the border with the kingdom of Gerona was close to the village. The Knight of the Border Guard used to patrol the border during the time of Earl Ferdinand, but now that the Lord had changed, the border had been abandoned. In short, the village was threatened because it now belongs to Lord Feltio. Van said that the former ruler Count Ferdinand had supporters in every town. It appears to his father, Lord Feltio, appointed rulers only for the larger towns, and the situation of the small villages was still unknown. Putting them aside, a small village was a village that did not need to be protected, and it paid almost no taxes. Van stated that from now on, he would keep them informed, and there was no point in complaining, lamenting, or criticizing the state of this country. Even if they don't believe it, it doesn't change anything. Son of Rodgamalaga seemed angry after Van's words. Van told him to sit down as he spoke on behalf of this village, while thinking how this village had no future with a person who had such a temper. Van mentioned that the founder of the kingdom, King Berlineth, might have left a flaw in the law. A silence continued after his statement. Esparta coughs to encourage him to say something. Van felt a little bit afraid, but he was still dedicated to ruling this village. He said that nothing can be changed by complaining about the laws of the kingdom and how it would be, but this village had them. There were 3 definite measures. First, they needed to create something of value that the kingdom couldn't ignore. Second was making money and hiring mercenaries regularly. Third, they were going to rebuild and develop this village themselves. The woman in there stated that they had also thought about this, but none of those could be accomplished so easily. If they were in such a remote place, even if they sell wood or stone, it would be impossible to make a profit. But because of their poor education, it would be difficult for them to produce handcrafts of varying value. And if so, they would not be able to make a profit. Van said that he knew it had not been easy for them, but now he was here, educated, and he was going to do everything he could to defend and develop this village. But he didn't get the reaction he expected, so Esparta interrupted. He said that Van had been entrusted with the management of the land even though he was 8 years old. But many people considered him a gifted child for this reason. Dee added that he, as the leader of the knighthood, had come to serve them faithfully, so he wanted them to allow him to join their troop. Now they seemed pretty impressed and emotional by their words. They then asked if Van possessed the 4 elements, but Van stopped them, saying that he had none of that, so they should not be expecting any combat power. First of all, they had to fortify the walls so no one could get in. The fence was strong, but it was made of wood and it was not resistant to fire. According to Espada, the stone would remain solid as long as magic was active, but later it would just be a lump of earth. Van told him to use the stones to reinforce the walls. He was sure they could make a solid wall in time. They also could use a moat and it would help keep the outlaws out. Dee volunteered for this job. He encourages the others to make some traps and prepare to attack from the wall. They would also need bows and arrows or stones, which were easier for the villagers. Van then went outside and told everyone his plan. He also promised to do his best for the development of the village. He said that even if he was a child, he had people behind him, and if the enemies came, they would fight. At the end of his speech, he realized that he looked like a politician. A man wanted to ask something. He asked what was going on with the taxes. They had been paying 30% on crops and monster skins and fangs. Van decided to make it 10%, and if it was not enough, he offered to pay it once. The villagers were shocked at his offer. He said that it was important to have a stable life. There were instances where people sold their children because of their debts. Some of them were also worried that the bandits would come back soon and wanted to call the knights, but he said that the message would take 2 weeks, so it was too late to call for help. They wouldn't even come because of the distance. The village people were angry that they would abandon them. Van understood their anger, but at present, he stated that the Marquis had neither the budget for the knights to defend a vast territory. Even if they could persuade the knights, they would be too few to help them. They needed 200 men. He asked Espad to build a wall behind a wooden fence, and he did it without questioning. The villagers were amazed. He said that they needed their help now more than ever, but if they joined them, this village would endure. They didn't have enough housing, so they rested in the wagon. Rhonda wanted to give up on his house, but they couldn't put him out on the street. Until now, Van had never complained that he only welded production magic. But recalling the memory of them being disappointed because he had no combat power was indeed bitter. He had tried to appeal to them, but the villagers were skeptical. He had to earn their trust for the success of the village and a happy life. He promised himself that he was going to protect the village and make it a good place for people to live. In the next chapter, Van, Dee, Esparta, and Rhonda were discussing. Van stated that if the enemy did not attack them, they could make the first attack. Usually from the walls, one's attacks with magic bows and arrows. Esparta responded that from a low wall, the attack wouldn't be that effective. Rhonda mentioned that they used to use spears to attack through gaps in the forest fortress. Dee responded, saying that enemies were in the same position now and they would be able to stab them with spears again. Van said the word catapult. Rhonda didn't know what he meant, but Esparta stated that the catapult was a siege weapon, and they couldn't use it to defend themselves. Dee explained to Rhonda that a catapult shoots huge boulders, but it was hard to tell where they would fall, and it takes time to recharge the catapult itself. However, the fortress walls and observation towers were big enough, so they could be easily destroyed with them. The range would be greater if they threw a box filled with small stones, and if they aimed it at the gate, their attack would be much more effective. Van also suggested putting bottles of oil and a torch in it to set the ground on fire, which would make their offensive even stronger. Esparta asked curiously who created this mechanism, and apparently it was Van. But they didn't believe his production magic at all. Van didn't fully understand it himself either. On his way to the country, he often used it to learn how to freely change the shape of stones, wood, and metal. And now it was time to show everyone what he had learned. In the next scene, Van asks Ortho if he thinks they could occupy the village now because the opposition party has left. Ortho confirmed him and mentioned that he was going to stay in the village for a while to make some extra money hunting mythical monsters. He then stopped and sensed monsters here. He told Van that it could be dangerous here, so he should sit down in the nearby trees. Van was amazed at Orta's intuition. As he travels, he detects and destroys enemies you didn't even suspect. Despite his skill, he can't raise his level. Kamshin found an enormous tree, but Van said that was too big, so they couldn't cut it down. He showed another tree, but that one was also too big. Van tried to use his skill. He couldn't imagine the shape clearly enough, so if he used magic, the new shape would be strange and fragile. The production magic was not easy to use. If he imagined a small part of it, he figured that he could be able to do what he wanted. At the bottom of his stomach, it gradually became warm and the power reached his fingertips. The image had to be as small as possible and detailed. He had to imagine even the fibers of the trees, and if he could, they would intertwine with each other and the cords would be able to form a tight knot. He felt like he had succeeded. When the fibers split into pieces and bind together, they would be transformed into a wooden cube. This cube was made of wood, but it looked like plastic. The fiber block had a stunning quality. It was stronger than wood under any treatment, so they were going to make a lot out of these blocks. Then they were planning to process it later after moving it to the coach first. Puriel came and asked if he collected wood. It was lighter and a lot harder than Ortho thought, which made it harder to break. Van told him to try breaking it to see how strong it was. Ortho hit the block repeatedly to break it, but there wasn't even a single crack on it. Van wondered which one was harder, the rock or the wood. Van was just happy that he found something very useful. At the carriage, he noticed that the magic power was depleted. Till asked if it had implications. He heard that magic was complicated, but it had logic. But looking at those things he created, Till noticed how skillfully crafted they were. Van was still trying to figure out how magic works. He has to imagine an entire weapon, its metal, its razor-sharp blades, and its shape. He created a sword and gave it to Kamshin, and he was so amazed that he promised to make it his family heirloom. He also created an axe and gave it to Till. He noticed Till's face and wondered if he didn't like this weapon. He seemed upset as he worked so hard on the axe to make it powerful so it couldn't be scratched or broken. Till tried to convince him that she loved axes and even hugged them. Van seemed convinced and was glad that she liked it. But on the inside, he actually knew she didn't, and promised to himself to make her some jewelry next time. He wondered if his magic power would improve the more he consumed. He then had an idea to use this unusually. In the next scene, they were pretty amazed at Esparta's skills. When Ortho stated that the butler was a good magician next to Van, he was a little flattered that they put him on the same level as Espada. Puriel found him a little strange. This kind of mage was usually attracted to the army, and if he was an adventurer, he would be top-ranked. Van was just glad that he followed him even though he was about to retire. The future was as important to him as the past, and he hoped Espada had a happy old age. While he was thinking positively about him, Espada approached Van and stated that he was growing up, and now, as a lord, he have to take the responsibility and the weight of the title. He panicked and started to explain to him that the most important thing now was to strengthen the village defenses, and he promised to reinforce the gates while Espada dragged him. He stopped and asked how he was planning to do that. D came and he was willing to pile up the stones. Being annoyed that everyone around here was acting stupid, Van stated that he was here to do something with magic. D noticed the mistake he made and told him that he admired him. They tried to convince Van that no matter how hard he worked, he couldn't do anything with magic. The gate was made from wood, so the process was similar to making ordinary wooden blocks. His only concern was the weight. The weight was the key to defending against the enemy. That was all they had got for now. Then they were going to make a heavy gate out of metal. Van concentrated and created an enormous gate that left everyone in shock. He told Ortho to cut this door with his sword, saying that it would repair itself. He wanted to test the power of the wall. Ortho used his all strength to cut the gate. It was indeed a powerful hit, but it only scratched a little. Van thought the wood was not the appropriate material, but the others immediately tried to object him. The next day he woke up from his sleep annoyed because sleeping in cramped quarters with only a sleeping bag was uncomfortable. He couldn't even wash up properly yet. On the way, they stayed overnight in camps and wagons. Even when they arrived in the village, they had to sleep in the carriage. When he went outside the carriage, Till and Kamshin greeted him. He was fine, but Till, Kamshin, and the others were much worse. They were too exhausted, and this situation couldn't go on like that. Before they start defending the village, they need to provide it with food, clothing, and housing. He decided to try to make a home. He told Kamsin to fetch the wooden blocks. Rhonda came and asked what were they doing. He explained that he wanted to build a house on this land and asked if it was safe and suitable. Rhonda said that it was the center of the village, so Van's mansion would look great. Van also thought about organizing a festival when they have some free time. He was strong enough, but he was still not sure if he would be able to build anything more than a house. For starters, he created 4 supporting beams, and then he would decide on the size. He had to pretend it was a wire and put it on the ground. The thicker the column, the better. Then he needed the floor and the walls, and only then could the roof be assembled. He pictured it in his head, but it seemed a lot bigger now. They needed interior walls. He used up all the blocks, but the house was done. It had a kitchen and a toilet, 1 big bedroom and a smaller one, and there were still 2 small rooms left. He had to use something with them because otherwise Espada would get mad. He put shutters on the windows. He would have to ask the dealers about the quartz sand. The house was done and was pretty big. Espada didn't think it was big. He actually thought it was a bit small, but it's still the biggest mansion around. It also didn't look like wood at all. Everyone was so amazed by Van's power. It was interesting magic, but he still thought strong attack magic was much bigger because the villagers should feel behind their lord like a stone wall. Till tried to object, saying she would rather live in his city than the Maquis of Jalpa. Espada stated that he was right when it comes to war, but in times of peace, people want a ruler who would make their lives better, and he can't think of anyone better suited to that role than him. The others came, and especially Dee was shocked. He couldn't believe Van built a house with magic in just a few seconds. Van mentioned that if they get more wood, he would be able to build houses for everyone. Dee ordered his men to get the food and use wagons if they needed it. Van actually had never seen anyone work with this much of a speed. Even Ortho was hyped up about this house, and he was willing to do the chopping. He also told everyone to not let the knights overtake them. Van was still confused because Ortho lived in the countryside, so he didn't need a house like that. After a while, Rhonda came with the villagers and mentioned the information that Van knew how to build houses. The people started expressing their house problems to Van just like Van thought. It was not going to be just one house. He regrets telling Dee about this, but he could see that the people had some pretty shabby houses. He eventually decided to do it and told them to get in the line and he would give them a new home. If his magic could make these people happy, he would have no choice. Espada and the villagers were building barricades. He, along with Mr. Ordo and the others, were logging timber. Van took Till and Camzen with him to build houses. He had already adapted to his power, so he could quite handle building these kinds of things. He would also want to design his own interior. He felt like he was doing someone else's orders. And it depressed him because it brought back memories of the period of corporate slavery. But once he started, he couldn't stop. Dee was still amazed at how great Van's store of magical power was. It took a lot of knowledge to build such a stunning mansion. The buildings were grouped into 4. The alleys and streets were arranged in a grid pattern. This type of building was called a building block. The houses of ordinary people were built uniformly so that there was not much difference. That was enough for now, but when they had the building stone, they would rebuild the houses individually for each family, although they were already very grateful for Van. They bow and offer their products as soon as they see him. In addition, he also erected a small and simple bathing house near the mansion. He actually made it for himself, but was still glad that the others also liked it. Pluriel used her water magic to purify the water, and her retro alternative to heat water with fire. Pluriel and Till asked Van to come with them to take a bath, but Van panicked and got embarrassed. Even though they knew him as an 8-year-old child, he was actually an adult in his 20s. He eventually took his bath alone and then went to his room, which was empty. It would be sad to use sleeping bags indoors, so he hurried up and made beds for everyone. At least he would make simple bedding out of the hay and straw the locals shared. Now that he was sleeping in a comfortable bed, he was happy. After a good night's sleep, he woke up and had a delicious breakfast with Till. It was so nice to have breakfast in his own home and have a carefree laugh with sweet Till. However, Espada informed Van that they needed to find a way to generate regular income. Currently, they come in once a month or so. From what he had learned, their only contact with the outside world right now was through merchants. Espada sounded so serious even though he had an omelet on his mustache. He didn't want to decide this at breakfast and felt a little annoyed at Espada. He stated that he could manage the house, the furniture, the clothes, and all the other household things. They have plenty of provisions. He was thinking about focusing on building up their defenses, but they didn't have any spices, as Espada said. He also mentioned that they didn't have the ingredients for his favorite sweet-baked goods. Van was furious after hearing that. He decided to make something for sale in this village right now and asked for ideas. Camzen suggested wooden blocks made by Van, but it was overruled because he was the only one capable of making them. Till suggested going on a monster hunt and getting some useful materials, which Van found overruled again because Otto and the others hunt as it was. But what the hunters got was their one. It was not the property of the village. In that case, Espada said that the solution should be to sell the harvest, but given the peculiarities of this village, there were difficulties, and it was not a way to generate income in the short term anyway. They had to think which way would be best for them. Zara was sure that Van was in love. He already suggested to them to try it out to find out how it works. He was in charge of diffusing traps, but he mentioned that they were worried about spoiling Van's precious gift. Zara said that it would be all right, seeing Camzen's and Till's worried faces. Zara showed them an oak tightly lined with leather on the inside and the edges, making it strong and resilient. He told Camzen to try, and when he hit it, it was too weak, so he was about to tell him that he should hit harder. However, the oak split in half like a piece of paper. They were all stunned. Zara started crying as his brand new oak was just broken. He was even more shocked when he learned that it was just a wooden weapon. Van told him to hold it and he would make it sturdier than before. He actually did make it. Orto came and asked what they were doing. Seeing Van there, he asked if he thought they could sell this one. There were quite a lot of powerful evil spirits deep in the woods, which was probably because of the Wolf's Mountains. He mentioned that they could mine rare minerals without going into the mountains. It was iron ore, but there was also silver and copper and some gold. And also he showed him the mithril ore. Van was thrilled by this. They were indeed lucky to be able to find those in the woods. Ordo had a suggestion. Until now, the problem with extraction had been great remoteness and the difficult terrain. It seemed the only thing that had been attempted here was nightly expeditions. And for them, herbs and minerals were of little interest. Van said it was a good chance for experienced adventurers to set up mining operations. And if there were rich deposits in the foothills, there would definitely be more to discover in the Wolfsburg Mountains themselves. First, he recycles the iron ore. In the case of wood, the recycling process was evenly distributed among the layers. But in the case of iron ore, there were parts to which magic penetrates gradually and there were parts that it deals with instantly. They need to convert the easily recyclable parts into sand. 1/3 of the original size was left. To check the quality, it should be melted down and purified because he didn't know how pure the ore was originally. Zara heatedly asked Van if he would try forging a sword out of the ore. A thin, double-edged sword was even enough. Ordo wondered if he really liked swords that much or iron weapons in general. Van said that since Zara brought him the ore, he would make weapons for all adventurers. Hearing this beautiful news, he wanted to have a dagger and one long sword. Van concentrated and started creating the first iron weapon. The thickness of blade was thicker than a katana, but the cutting part of the blade must be extremely sharp. He believed the density of the metal also plays a role. All that was left to do was to put it all together and fasten it. After a few seconds, he was holding the sword. It didn't take long, and it was not because he was skipping steps for the sake of speed. It was a demonstrable result of the growth of his skills. He handed the sword to Zara and he was so happy that he let out a scream. While they were all trying to see the new sword he made, Van wanted to make it longer, and in the same design without being bothered by the voices. He successfully made a sharp and powerful sword and gave it to Zara. Seeing Zara's weapons, the other adventurers were in demand to have new weapons made by Van. As for his weapons, Puriel stated that it was hard to say for sure until it had been tried out, but it could be sold for quite a high price. Espada said it was really quite a novelty. Ore deposits in the middle of the forest, not in the mountains, are rare. Iron sand was more often. It seemed that the ore contained in these rocks was very rare. The expectations were golems of stone, iron, and other ores. So if there were dungeons nearby, that would explain everything. Ordo's team had never stumbled across anything like that. Zara wondered the possibility of the remains of golems destroyed a long time ago. Ordo asked if there were any dungeons around there, but they didn't know yet. They have not explored the area, so it might have been somewhere. Espada stated that if a dungeon was discovered, their business would change dramatically, and this village would generate an abundance of trade. Van smiled a little, and he seemed to like the possibility of the village's importance increasing dramatically thanks to the new dungeon he might find. Dungeons were a real treasure trove of resources. Most of the weapons, jewels, and other artifacts of the country were obtained from the dungeons. They were therefore important. Members of the Adventurers Guild were obligated to report to the guild if they ever found a new dungeon. The guild that receives a report of a new dungeon has the right to open a branch in the nearest settlement. Discovering a new dungeon was a great achievement for an adventurer. It was a good opportunity to make a name for yourself. You could even get into the circles of the best adventurers. You could also get the right to be the first to explore a new dungeon. Van said, under the current circumstances, if this village passes on the dungeon report, it was unlikely they would be able to afford to accept guild members. Espada confirmed him and added that the village would be fooled by adventurers, merchants, and even knights. There was a shortage of food and other resources, and there was also the possibility of an attack by a neighboring country that Ferdinand would most likely invade. Ortho asked if they should search the dungeon, but they would be expelled for that. Puriel stated that as soon as they found out about the dungeon, they would send knights here. So with Van's magic, the construction production problem would be solved in the blink of an eye. Van said that he impeded the Fertile family. If they get the chance, they will get rid of him. So they must first expand and develop this village before claiming the dungeon, then the Fertile family wouldn't be able to do anything. Ortho told the other to explore the area where the dungeon might be and go around it when they were gathering resources. It was not profitable to claim the dungeon now, but Van was hoping that they would be rewarded. Dungeons were important to the country as well as the aristocracy. Van's family thinks he is useless and they have no plans for his future. If he claimed the dungeon now, it would simply be offered to one of his brothers. That was the reason why he had to use his power, so that no one else could have this village. While walking with Till, Van said that the housing situation was good for now, and their next thing was financing and providing for the defense. Till wondered if his magical power still going strong, and Van confessed that he was getting tired. When he gets tired, he won't do anything. They needed the labor force, but there were few people here who knew how to work with their hands. He would like to create a stock of weapons and shields even before the arrival of traders. The defense was just as important. The outer wall was almost complete. H had laid out stones and managed to make those walls as strong as concrete. At first, he did not have enough height and thickness, but he solved this problem. And on the wall itself, he put a simple ballista using leather in the manufacture. It was equipped with a big shield at the front, letting them fire huge bolts without fear of enemy counterattacks. He placed towers around the perimeter of the village on which he also installed ballistas. Till went to get dinner, and when she left, Van thanked Kamsin. However, he noticed something was off, so he asked. Kamsin said that he just brought him the stones and he transformed the village so easily. He seemed like he was still trying to process his power. Van said that as a lord it was his duty to work for the good of the village. He asked if Kamsin aspired to anything. Kamsin's goal was to protect Van. Van seemed to feel his dedication but asked him politely to not overdo it. He knew that Kamsin was always so straightforward and cared about him. Next time he decided to make him armor. His dear knight needed the fine armor that would keep him safe in times of trouble. For 3 days he worked hard and the village now looked like a small fortress. Van found it perfect, but he asked where else they could see such a well-protected village, but there was nowhere. Espada didn't even think they could call it a village. It was more like a small fortress, and now there was no way for bandits to get behind those walls. Dee thought about the possible scenario if Jalpa realized the power of Master Van. Espada disagreed, saying that the head of the house considered it paramount to be able to fight. There was no point in discussing it now. But Dee said that it was not impossible to use Master Wang's abilities in battle, and if they give him time, he would be stronger than anyone else. They started to argue, so Van had to interrupt, saying that it was meaningless to regret circumstances or what kind of talent he was born with, and what was important was to be able to adapt and live with what was given to you by fate. He decided to quote some phrases he had heard before, and it seemed like they liked it. Dee started laughing and agreed to Van. As the atmosphere was getting more cheerful, it was time to work. The ditches have just been dug and haven't been filled with water yet. A ditch with water was perfect for defense. There was even something aesthetic about it. He didn't think they should forget about drinking water. It was necessary to reinforce the bottom and walls of the ditch, and they needed to provide a water supply route. Now they go to the river for water or filter the rainwater they managed to collect. While he was thinking about having a more reliable source of water, he heard a noise behind him. The bandits were here. They were already coming from the other side. Van told them to raise the bridge and close the gate. He asked if there was anyone left outside and sent someone to check it. It had only been a few days and they were already obeying his orders without hesitation. Except, they were still afraid to fight. It was the same in the last battle. He was also a little scared himself. As a lord, he couldn't afford to look scared. He acknowledged their fear and stated that it was possible that some of them would suffer. However, this was an important battle for the future of the village, and that's why he would fight for it. He said that he couldn't do it alone and asked for their help. Van's encouraging words seemed to work on those people, and they didn't seem like they were afraid of anything now. Van started to give his orders, and before he went to fight, Till grabbed him. Seeing Till's torn eyes, he told Dee to take his men and find out what the enemy was planning. Dee, with a lot of confidence, told him to rely on him and that he was an outstanding leader and genius, and generally the best of the best. Even if the advantage was not on his side, even if he was surrounded, Dee believed that he would be successful. He was proud of the fact that he had more success than Commander Stradale, and now he was going to serve Van. He trusted him and was willing to risk his life. Dee asked about the situation, and his man explained that it finally became clear what kind of groups were out there in the distance, which looked like bandits. He noticed that they were heading there and informed Van about this. He also mentioned that they were a few hundred yards away. They have to get ready to defend themselves. Van asked if someone was following them, which was also a possibility. While they were thinking about the possibilities, one of them saw a tail. It was a bunch of armored dragons coming towards them. The situation was not good. It was hard for an experienced knight to fight an armored dragon, and there was not a single experienced fighter in this village. It looked like those armored dragons were chasing the bandits right at them, and there was no way to penetrate them with ordinary weapons. This magic was effective, but the only mages who could fight now were Espada and that adventurer's daughter. And the adventurers themselves had gone after the materials. Even if there was no mage, a heavy knight could slow him down and then hit him where he was weak, but locals wouldn't be able to do that. They can't withstand a tail and claw attack. Van ordered everyone to get behind the ballistas and put the ballista bolts nearby. Dee also told everyone to listen to Van and follow his orders. People were running away from the dragon screaming for help. There was no end in sight, and this kind of attack was hard to repel even in a big city. Dee calculated that there were about 40 armored dragons 8 meters in length, and they could use the bandits as bait. But Van felt sorry for them and asked if there was any other way to do this. This made Dee laugh, and he apologized. He thinks that it is better to relax and laugh in the face of danger in a tight spot like that, and you will just find a solution. He told everyone to aim for the dragons, shooting them when the bandits jumped into the moat. Van asked if the bandits at this distance could handle him, and they confirmed him. Even if hitting their eyes or mouths would be fine and they would have a better chance then. Dee stated with great confidence that none of them would die today and that they were going to win this battle. "We will have dragon barbecue for dinner tonight," he said confidently. In the next scene, the bandits are running towards the village in fear of the dragons chasing them. Seeing they were close enough, Dee told his men to be ready. Even though he didn't show it, he was aware of how challenging the situation they were in was. He ordered his men who had the catapult ready to fire it. Even though the arrows fired reached the dragons, they seemed to vanish and have no effect. But what happened was that the arrows Van created actually pierced the dragons' bodies. The arrow hit the paw of the armored dragon who was behind. The dragon also broke its paw and stuck it into the ground. Obviously, they did not kill much, but this was something that they did not expect. When Van asked Dee what was going on, Dee told him he had done something amazing, but he didn't seem to understand much. Dee explained that they killed about 10 armored dragons in one volley. He also stated that they didn't have arrows anymore and that they needed to bring them from the unused ballista. Van had an idea and he told him to use a wooden one if there wasn't any iron left. Dee gave the order and told his men to get ready. After one volley, everyone already gained confidence so people would be sure of victory. The second salvo would be even more accurate. The people on the watchtowers had also set up and taken positions. There was no doubt for Dee that they would gain victory. He ordered them to fire the arrows to show the power of this village. The painful screams of dragons could be heard by everyone. The wooden arrows managed to break them. Although the result was not the same as iron's, it turned out to pierce such a thick scale. Dee ordered everyone to use wooden arrows, aim, and fire. After a few times, all the dragons were dead, and the victory was with them. Defeating at least 40 dragons with only 60 arrows was not something Commander Stradale would believe. Dee was proud of Van. He went to Van and Van seemed so happy. It was Van's first time seeing the dragon, so he was a little surprised. As he called them dinosaurs, Dee started laughing because he didn't even know what those were. Dee expressed his joy by dragging Van from place to place with the happiness of winning. Van noticed that there were people outside the gate, and Dee informed him that 30 people survived. Dee told them to tie them up and warned them to not do anything other than what they said. The bandits were so scared that they were even willing to be slaves to them. They begged them to hire them. Rhonda stated that those people often plundered their village. The villagers were also angry and started attacking them as they killed some of their family. Just before one of them hit the bandits, Van held his fist as he didn't want him to get his hands dirty. He said that they would be punished, so he didn't need to do the same bad thing to them, just like they did. He then turned to the bandits and stated that they would still have to suffer punishment. As soon as someone comes here, they will be taken away. Until then, he wanted them to contribute for the sake of the village. They gave them the job of weeding out the dragon to get the magic core. Ortho was so amazed by the things that happened in the past week that he was sure it would last for the rest of his life. Phil and Zara were also impressed by the weapons. Even if 30 people use Van's perfect swords, 4 or 5 bodies for a day was the maximum. They had to be on time, so Ortho decided to butcher it while it was still fresh. From the next day, Dee, Orta's team, Kamshin's team, and the Free People dealt with carcasses. Van had changed the material of the cleaning knife, so now it was sharper. The team finished after 3 days. Then the next night, Van made a speech. He thanked the villagers and everyone for working hard for the village. Now they didn't have to worry about money and could use any seasoning. He prepared a feast for everyone and told them to drink no more than 2 glasses. Van was also enjoying the dragon meat, even when grilled crispy. The texture of the meat was juicy and soft and flew through his tongue. Ortho mentioned that the meat inside was fatty and tasty because it was protected by a hard shell. Dragons were expensive, that's why they sell them. Now Ordo made sure that the ballista arrows were as powerful as the weapons he made for them. Dee overheard this statement and was devastated that Van didn't give him a sword. While the adventurers were pleased by their weapons, Dee and his team surrounded Van asking for swords and daggers. Van was overwhelmed by Dee and his team, and people who were thanking and offering him food but did not change his attitude. The villagers found him strange as he still went over to his side even though he was in for a hard life. It was the one who was about to attack the bandits for killing his family, and he was grateful to Van for stopping him. He decided to try making this village better for the sake of the deceased families. Rhonda and his helper Aldo seemed to enjoy the fest. The woman was happy that they were able to gather together even with aristocrats. Espada stated that it might be a problem if she thinks like an aristocrat, but that was part of Van's charm. Till looked at Van, and she realized that Van was about to do more amazing things in the future. In the next scene, Ortho, Van, and the others are talking about selling the dragons. Ortho stated that for 1 dragon with a shell, the merchants would give them 20 gold coins. As most of the meat was rotten, they wouldn't be able to sell it, and considering the transport costs for the rest of the body, they would be able to get about 8 coins. They had 30 bodies, so in the end, they would get more than 300 coins. Van converted it to yen inside his head, and it was more than 300 million. Espada congratulated him on his successful defense. Van didn't forget the assistance with a protective barrier Espada gave them, so he was also thankful for him. Espada pointed out that even though the results were wonderful, there was a law according to which a village or city that had earned more than 100 gold coins must pay a tax of 50% to the treasury of the marquis. This meant that they would also learn about the state of the village. Espada briefly told him that even if it would be difficult to keep it a secret, it wasn't impossible. Van was stunned. He hadn't seen anyone who had served the marquis for decades with the same devotion as Espada, and now he was proposing a method to deceive his father. This case was different from the dungeon. This time, to hide the truth, they would act covertly, and it would be a betrayal to his father. However, his father preferred a peaceful life without his son, so Van asked what his plan was. Firstly, he was going to report it to his older brother Murcia, crediting him with the dragons. An order of knighthood would not do, therefore he offered Hessians and adventurers. They stumbled upon a herd, but it was in the forest, so he could pretend that they destroyed it individually. Throwing him away, 3 older brothers claimed to be the head of the family. Everyone was trying to curry favor, and he wanted Murcia, who had supported him to this day, to win. Van made his decision and stated how great Espada's plan was. The next morning, Van was greeted by everyone he had seen in the village. While they were praising him, Van held Till's hand. Till was surprised at first, but she was happy that he wanted affection. Van behaved like an adult in the bathing situation, but he was still 8 years old, so he was using his child privilege. However, after a while, he decided to let her hand go because of his dignity. But thinking about Till leaving him one day did not please him. However, he wanted to focus on her happiness now. Van was about to say something about Till's future partner, but Till interrupted him, saying that she wanted to take care of him to keep being with him, and that's why she had never thought about this topic. They went to the gate, and Van asked the guardians if they had spotted something. It was merchants. It was Mr. Bell and Mr. Lango. Van barely made out the black silhouettes, but this man could even see their faces. Just in case, Van told them to raise the bridge and prepare the ballista. They tried to explain to him that they weren't bandits, but they could be in the wagon and around it, and not just merchants and the convoy. Bandits could threaten their people, so he was not taking any risks. He told Kamshin to call Orto and D. They got to do a lot of things, and it depends on him how effectively he would use each opportunity. Finally, the time he was waiting for had come. Meanwhile, the merchants got stuck. The man inside said that the wagon broke down on the road, which was why a lot of products became unusable. He told the driver to consider the repair costs, the cost of the stay, and the convoy. Even after returning to the Hashimura, they didn't get a lot of money from the seller. The bald one called the man who was speaking, and he asked if it was Hashimura. He said that no matter how he looked, this place did not seem like a village at all. He asked if they missed the way, but there was no way. While they were arguing, Van greeted them from the top of the gate. He introduced himself as the owner of the village, Vanni Furto. He said that if they were really a trader, they must list the name of their trading company and their names, and if they were an escort, they must state their position and names. Hearing his name, the merchants were a little nervous. The two weren't really sure, but the bald one stated that their stronghold was the largest city, so they saw it several times. It was definitely him. The driver was shocked at how young Van was. He knew geniuses were shunned, but not so much that the Marquis personally sent him to the border. They started introducing themselves. The one who used the carriage was Mary Bell, a merchant, just like his brother Lango. The other guy was a security guard at Adventurer Air. Van asked Ordo if he knew anyone, and he said that they had been meeting in the Adventure Guild and also drinking together. Van permitted them to enter the village and welcomed them. When they entered the village, Rhonda and the others greeted them. Bell and Lango apologized to Rhonda for not coming back for so long and expressed their happiness about their wellness. Van came and apologized for the detention. He introduced himself once again. He asked quickly if they could sell them dragon shell parts, and they both seemed pretty excited because even adventurers hate to fight such strong beasts. The brothers were about to sob from happiness. Van offered to take them to the warehouse. When they arrived, Bell and Lango's jaws were on the floor after seeing 23rd meter steps of material from armored dragons. Van explained that they pacified about 40 dragons with shells and arrested about 30 people. Then they thought about leaving these people to help move stuff. He also stated that their wagon was restored. Processing the situation here, Bell stated that they have to call people for trade as soon as possible. He asked Van if they could wait until they do something about it within a month, and it was fine for Van. He also mentioned that they didn't need to think about it at the moment because it was time to eat delicious meat. Bell figured that this amount of meat would be too much for the consumption of the village, which meant it would rot. So he asked if Van would mind if they took the meat to the neighboring village for sale, and they could reimburse the price. Van asked if the neighboring village could afford to buy such meat. Bell said that this was a poor village, but this year, after paying taxes, they probably wouldn't have any savings left, and they asked them about products. Food in the village must be running out. If they give at least some of the meat for free, it would help somehow, as Bell thought. Van said that they were going to give it for free. He said that even though Bell was a trader, he didn't think profit was the main thing for him. Bell was amazed by Van's sharp brain. He mentioned that they would also pay him a good price for bandits. In this case, their profit would be almost non-existent, but at least it was a paycheck. Van thanked him and told him to come to this village in the future, and he promised him a deal he wouldn't regret, such as good quality armor. Bell seemed surprised once again, and asked if he also bring a blacksmith in addition to a highly qualified draftsman and carpenter. Van answered him with his cute smile. When he showed them the armor he made, they were indeed in shock. Bell hadn't figured out the intricacies of the advantages and disadvantages of weapons, but as an exhibit, it was excellent. Ordo gave him a dragon skin to test it, and it cut off with no problem. The Guardianaire was thrilled and wanted to buy them. Bell also expressed his surprise about so many amazing possibilities that Van offered to him, but he unwillingly stated that they can't get that many. It was okay with Van, and he told him that he could always buy it later. They continued to walk around the village, and Van showed them the new things he did in the village. After that, they gave them delicious dragon meat. Bell asked if merchants come here once a month and added that he could talk to the trade group and increase the number of visits to 2. Van mentioned that they needed some supplies and sake. One good meal was enough to make the villagers more cheerful. In addition, he ordered an advertisement for their weapons if possible. He figured that those brothers were thinking about an exclusive sale, which was a good thing. He said if 2 people always trade along the same route and organize themselves to sell weapons, they would soon reach their village. They could come up with ads, so the more they sell, the more they get. Hearing this, the brothers seemed interested. Van said that they should open a village shop. If it were possible to negotiate with the owner of the enterprise or traders or with anyone, it would be great, as Van said. Bell and Lango were overflowing with happiness after hearing the idea of a stable income and the opportunity to have their store. Van was even thinking about building a house for them. If they agree, the shop saves him time because he wouldn't have to negotiate with various merchants. Besides, it would be the first shop here. The deal was beneficial for both parties. Bell told his brother to go and discuss the proposal with the boss. Before they left, he said to Van that he would work here in a store in this village until things got better. They shook hands, and the negotiations were a great success. After that, Lango with the adventurers left the village fast to convince the Chamber of Commerce to get them labor and materials. What will help convince the Chamber of Commerce is his sword, the skin of the dragon, and the magic core. He also asked him to send his brother Mercia a letter which would give him all the achievements. Besides, near the village entrance, he builds a shop for Bell. Bell was sweating and crying out for happiness. Van explained that the first floor was the shop, the second floor would be a place to live, and the underground would be a warehouse space. He tried to do the same as the instruction that Bell asked. Bell did believe in his powers, but did not expect him to have this much power in the palm of his hands. The products must be done within 2 weeks, so the deals with Bell's shop are done for now. In the second half of the day, they went out from the village to the river. After walking for a while, Till asked if he was tired, but he told everyone to keep moving. Kamshin was moving in front of them to clear the road for them. The trust was that Van wanted to show his care and kindness to everyone, but he couldn't maintain his strength because Kamshin was strong. The way from the village took an hour, and then in front of them was a long and beautiful river where they had to get water. With that, the construction of the water supply had started. Espada, with the help of his magic, dug tens of meters in an instant. When he takes a break, D, Kamshin, and the other guts dig on their own. He followed everyone behind and strengthened the walls. The amount of Espada's magical power could be a surprise. D was also working with dedication even though he was almost 40. Till commented on how hard their job was considering the distance between the river and the village. But without water, they wouldn't be able to survive. The job was hard, but he thought that working together to reach the goal was great. In addition to the barrier, there was a satisfaction that one cannot enjoy alone. If living conditions were improved, then life itself would become better, and it would be easier for merchants and other people to come here. That was his goal for a comfortable life here. After 8 hours of digging, he could finally see the village. It was supposed to take about a week, but their pace was amazing. Van told them to stop for today. Espada and D seemed surprised because if they kept up, they would reach the village after a few hours. Van told D to look at Abu, Lu, and Kamzin. D thought he found a good training method but agreed with Van. It was really scary to see the hidden strength of the older generation and veterans. The next day, to their surprise, they dug into the village before the end of the morning, and then it was time to let the water through. Van thanked them for their great contribution. They opened up and the water started flowing with a wave of great peace. Children and villagers were very happy when they saw the water reaching their village. Rhonda also seemed happy about the time and effort savings they made. But to drink this water, they still need to filter and boil it, and for this they needed a special instrument. Lou came, and apparently he was interested in what instrument Van was about to create. Van suggested creating together with him, and he accepted it immediately. The filtering machine was made of branches, leaves, sand, soil, stones, and clothes, and would be located at the end of the canal drawn towards the village. The water coming out of there would be stored directly in the metal gear. The required amount of water would be drawn from the tap installed under the water tank and moved out to the boiler. And the fire for the boiler kindles itself with a fire magic crystal. Lou decided to go to Bell and get info if he had them in the shop. Kamshin came and informed him that water filled the space. Van was satisfied with the result. He wondered if there would be flooding if the water level rose due to rain. Espada seemed surprised that he noticed it. He said that essentially depending on the volume of water, the channel was widened and embankments were built in those places where it often floods. But those waterways required ingenuity. The water did not have a place to go out. Van needs to make sure that it can return to the river if it overflows or makes a lake behind the village. Returning the water to the river was a good idea for Espada, but he explained that the idea of creating a lake could be wonderful. In times of lack of precipitation and there was no water coming from the river, the reservoir was priceless. Van wondered if they would be fine if they had measures to prevent flooding, and Espada confirmed him. A lake must be built 200 meters from the backside of the village. This was a forced, urgent project before the rains came. In 3 days the lake was almost done and he wanted to put a spillway or something like that, but he needed to think about how they would use it in practice. So far, Van was just a happy boy to have a large amount of water. In the next scene, Van was nervous and grumpy. He woke up even before the sun rose, and apparently many people including Rhonda were in a panic. Dee and Espada had already headed to Lake Van, which Van had no idea who named it. Till explained that the lake was called like that in honor of his merit and to preserve the legacy for future generations, wherein the village changed its name to Van Village. Van didn't have a good feeling about this. He felt like it was not quite right. Before they discussed this issue, one of the villagers came in panic and told him to come. Van and Till immediately headed to the lake. It looked like they were going through the passage from the backside. When they arrived at the village, lots of people were gathered in worry. Van asked what was going on and they showed him the thing inside the lake. It looked like there was a person inside the lake looking at them. In a deep forest in the river, there was a mythical animal with perfect blue hair. They were half people, half mermaids, and they were called Abgaloo. Van had never heard of them, so Espada explained that they couldn't see them so easily and that girl was Abgaloo. Van asked her name, but there was no answer. It looked like she didn't understand. Van told Till and Cam to bring some meat and fruits. First, what they needed for a relationship was food, as he thought. The girl slowly approached them, and everyone held their breath. After smelling the food, she asked if she could eat. Van was so surprised that he accidentally scared her out, so she went away once again. He apologized and asked her to swim back. He offered the meat and the fruits, and she started eating. After tasting the meat, she frowned and asked who caught the dragon meat. Dee, Ortho, and everyone else stated that it was Van, even though it was actually the ballistic. After hearing that, the girl swam away and disappeared, leaving everyone in shock. The next day, Till busted into Van's room screaming for his name. She said that there was a message from villagers about the attack, and everyone was panicking. Hearing the word attack was enough to wake him up. While he was wearing his clothes, Till explained that she heard the enemy already occupied the water channel. Van didn't expect them to get close, but he was sure they would leave after they saw their ballistics. His sleep was disturbed, so he was grumpy. However, when he went outside and looked at the enemy, there were lots of Abgaloo looking at him. Yesterday there was a child, but today there were men and women of different ages, but all of them looked younger. The most aged one among them wanted to talk to Van. Van feared him, so he asked Dee, Ordo, and Espada to come with him. Bell was also there and informed Van that Abgaloo brought some rare things and customers say that business with them was huge, so it would be a great idea. He wanted to take a closer look, so Van let him go too. They went down and the man who wanted to talk to Van stated that his daughter was grateful to him. He said that he heard the boy defeat the dragon and it looked like it was true. The other Abgalis seemed surprised. They wondered if he was a powerful mage. They also seemed to notice there were strong guys close to him. The man admitted that he was a brave human. He said that he accepted the marriage between him and Lada Priora. After a moment of silence, Van expressed his surprise, unlike the ones who completely froze behind him. He had so many questions in his head, such as what the hell this man was talking about, who was Lada Priora, and what the hell was marriage. The man, apparently he was the father of Lada Priora. Lada Vesta asked if he didn't accept it. Van asked where she was, and she was the one who played with her friends. Van asked how long have he been talking about marriage as she was still a kid. Vesta said that they were the Lada race and they hadn't spoken with people before. But the last time their river became a place for dragons with Sheld, their teammates died, so they were looking for a strong husband for Lotta Priora, who would like to save them. Van now figured that they were just looking for strong people for their safety, just like aristocrats using marriage for political things. Van stated that she must marry the guy she loves. He also stated firmly that they would protect them without marriage. In this case, Vesta stated that they would live with their son-in-law and asked if he was the owner of this water. Van said that he was not the owner and asked if they could move on to the lake because there were bridges, and if there would be guests or merchants they could scare them. He then realized that he called him his son-in-law. He tried to explain to him that he didn't accept the marriage, but they were already going, and Priora called him his husband. Espada stated that he was lucky that he got a friendship with Abdallah, but the first wife of Van was Abgalu. Till was okay with it if it was Van's choice. But even if he didn't accept it, the husband's revolt failed. Abdallahs were enjoying their time in the lake while Van was wondering if he needed to take a look at them as the owner of the lake. Following this through, he builds 2 buildings similar to Feelings as a place to relax. Thanks to the roof and walls, they could safely spend time. Van was happy that they liked it. Espada hadn't heard that the Scuderia were buildings of this kind. Van had a store of knowledge that even Espada didn't know, so this was impressive for him. The villagers started to contact Abgalu and share grain and meals. Suddenly, people began to talk about the fact that the Ingalls began to bring ores. Their friendship was getting better and better. Van decided to build one more wall, more powerful than the previous one, so big that it would be able to fence the lake and fortify the village for Abgalu security. Espada stated that it would be nice to build fixtures in a decimal city for future development. Van asked if it would be big to build a city for 10,000 people. Looking for village progress wouldn't be enough, and if they built a wall, they would need guards to protect it. So his advice was to build for so many people, but the territory will be smaller. He wondered what would happen if a variant was better with 1 or 2,000 people. But Espada did not agree. He said that he would need to spend more time on it later, and that was something he needed to consider first, and it would not happen. Espada is stubborn, and when he speaks his mind, even his father cannot speak back to him. Espada continued to explain to him that ideally, the length of each part should be at least 600 meters, considering that it would contain fortifications, houses, and bases and various guilds. The time for the wall build would start in the future when you will have enough people. Now we can build a wall in such a form that would like to upgrade in the future, Espada said. At the moment, Van was looking for a variant with a non-square fortified city. Espada said that there were a lot of times when the mage was able to push through one point of attack, and the square city was the most effective variant due to the simple way of defense. Just like a star-like city, it was a triangular part that even if you defeated it, you wouldn't be able to get to the city. The road connected to the city wall but could be separated from the wall side. Afterward, they didn't need to hurry and attack corners before they reached the main part. Even if they ignore them and try to destroy walls, they would get concentrated attacks from 3 sides. It was a form of strengthening that was created on the earth when guns were created, but it would work in this world of sword and magic. Espada continued, saying that if he attacked from the front, he would concentrate his attack, but if the attack was from corners, he couldn't spread out to the left or right. That's why he needed more people. It was a very good form, he said. In this case, even good mages wouldn't be able to line up the infantry to be shielded. While they were talking, someone came into the room and told Van that a messenger arrived from Count Ferdinand. There was not only an emblem of Count Ferdinand, there was a unicorn emblem and shield of Viscount Cayenne, a rising nobleman from the faction of Count. Count Ferdinand was the owner of the city, so Van guessed that he might want it back. At the front gate, a little girl and a woman were standing, and they did not seem to like the rumors about the so-called child prodigy. The next scene begins with 2 ladies talking in a carriage. One reassured the other not to worry and told her they should see who to talk to first. Meanwhile, Van was preparing for his guests. Till prepared some food and tea while he was worrying about how many people would be coming. He seemed nervous and wanted the best to happen to him. The door knocked and he let his visitors enter his room. 2 women entered the room. One of them was grown and the other seemed younger. He introduced himself and informed them that he was entrusted with the possession of this fief. The older woman was Panamera Carrera Cayenne, and she was recently promoted to Viscount as a parvenu from knighthood. The little one was the youngest daughter of Count Ferdinand, Arut and Ferdinand. She said that they were informed about Marcus Furtios resides in this village, and her father suggested she meet him. Van was surprised that they sent the youngest daughter and Panamera as her escort. Even though he was a little scared, he stated how grateful he was that they would go to the trouble of personally visiting his humble village. She was no ordinary person. To go from a knight to a baron in a single generation and then go on to become a viscount, there was no doubt that this woman was powerful and had a keen intellect. Panamera commented about how calm he was, even though he was a bit younger than Artiju. Without any ulterior motive, she asked what he was thinking about why they had come here. Van got the feeling that she wanted him to guess her intentions. A count whose territory was reduced would be angry, yet at the same time he would be in awe of the markets. The genius Van was sent to a remote area, and the Earl was scared that the markets could plan an attack. This could be the reason why he sent Panamera and his daughter. He said that they probably came with the aim of gathering information on the opponent's statutes and for the subsequent agreement with him. Panamera burst into laughter, as she didn't expect him to understand it all when he was only 10 years old. She confirmed his hypothesis and stated that Mr. Ferdinand was not able to read Market's Furcio. Everyone was looking for an influential heir, and his name had come up many times in the last 2 years. The grand opening takes place soon, and the Marquis boasts of his continued prosperity, but since it hadn't happened yet, they came there. She was having a hard time understanding why he had been chosen as owner of this fief, and it might be because he didn't get magic using any of the 4 elements. If rumors could be trusted, he was a child prodigy, and usually the owner of a fief must be highly educated to develop territory. That was why Graf had been wondering why he received lands bordering the territories of the Count and the Kingdom of Geronet. It wasn't ambition inappropriate for the position of leadership. In this country, fighting to the death between aristocrats was forbidden. Van wondered what kind of person she was to say this so boldly. He admitted that he didn't have abilities related to the 4 elements of magic. However, the rest of the fears were unfounded because they sent him here on a whim. That was not clever for Panamera. She asked if the rumors were true about the fact that he was a genius. She heard that this was just a village of 100 houses, but in 1 or 2 months he built a fortress wall. Buildings were converted, and he also built invisible materials. Also, he had an experienced butler and a master-level knight. At the very least, he had 5,000 people. Technology that lets him invisibly move his army was a problem for them, but he did it even when he knew that he would be spotted. It means turning the border into a military base, as she claimed. However, Van started laughing, which made her even angrier than she was. He apologized for laughing and decided to stop this delusion. He explained that everything his father allowed him to take was Kamzan and some baggage. His family didn't even see him off, and they told him to leave the city in silence. She then asked about the knight, the butler, and the others waiting for him outside. Before Van responded to her, Dee stated that they were impressed by his wisdom and talent, so they followed him. He also mentioned that he got a letter from the knightly order to immediately return, but he ignored it. Espada joined the conversation and explained that he was an old man, and when he realized that Van was going, he thought that it would be a good reason to retire, and his mission was to give all his skills to him. Till then said that even if Van was an aristocrat, even with people like them, he communicated fairly, and she was happy to serve a kind-hearted master who cared about his subordinates. And Van was grateful to those people for following him to such a remote area. Panamera then required an explanation about the transformation of this village. Van decided to show her. She was confused, so he simply responded that he wanted to build one more fortress wall outside. When they went outside, everyone was waiting for Van. He requested they bring wooden blocks. They started walking outside the fortress. Panamera asked where they were going, and he looked at her firmly. He knew she was suspecting that there could be an ambush, but remained silent. Espada led them somewhere and stated that the area was right, but the corners would be a bit farther. Van came up with the solution of doing a width of about 2 meters and fixing it later. With that, Van created a fortress right in front of her eyes, proving that he was a great 4-element mage in resignation. Van said that once the wall loses magic, this wall should crumble and lose its strength. This was made of bones, volcanic and earthen rocks, as well as some ore. The amount of materials needed for combining was substantial. He wanted to make perfect concrete, but he didn't have enough materials for that, so he had to use temporary measures. Panamera was shocked. She asked if those materials were used for house building, and he confirmed her. While he was building the gate by using metal, he said that he had to imagine its shape and strength. After creating both the wall and an entrance, he left everyone in shock. The princess wondered what his magic skill was, and Panamera joined her. Van explained that he had production magic, which made him able to create only items, and he added that it was useless magic in society. Princess Arut's father was busy, so she wasn't able to spend time with him. Her mother was not interested in her, which is why she left her with a babysitter. For obvious reasons, she was useless. She had a timid nature, fastidiousness, and inability to study. There wasn't anything he had a talent for. The only thing was the puppetry magic. She was inept at anything physical, like dancing, but she was able to control and move the doll better than her own body. She was not capable of anything, but because of this, she could finally make her mother happy. Excited to get approval from her parents, who she rarely saw, she started to practice her magic. But unlike what she expected, the only reaction she got from her mother was her screaming in her face that she was a useless daughter. She didn't even understand what she did to piss them off. Later, she learned that her magic was considered useless in high society, and in the end, magic that was her last hope was useless. After that day, her mother stopped visiting her and other people didn't talk or pay any attention to her. She quietly held her breath and spent her days inactive. She blamed herself for everything that happened to her, and the image of her mother yelling at her did not leave her sighing. When she was 10, her father called her. Panamera was also there and she was questioning why he was sending her and suggested he send the agenda. Her father told her to stop talking nonsense. While he was explaining to her, Arut was wondering who she was. Panamera turned to Arut and asked her if she knew about her future marriage. Arut's eyes started tearing up when she heard this question. Panamera stated that if he was skilled, they might start considering marriage, but if he isn't skilled, then they wouldn't do it. Arut asked if the reason she was going to leave the house was because she was useless. Panamera said that all of her brothers and sisters had already found husbands, and she was the only one left. It would be fine if the person she ended up marrying was great. She took Arut with her powerful and beautiful hand, and Arut believed that she finally found a person who cared about her. The trip was about 3 weeks long. She was kind of happy for the first time in her life. Panamera was nice even though she always had a reason to be furious. She was nice but often got angry. When she said that she was useless, she would give her a lecture and hug her. She often started a conversation by stroking her head. Suddenly, when she started crying, Panamera was not angry and she stroked her head again. She very much liked the touch of Panamera's hands. She also jokes around a lot. She didn't want to get married. She just wanted to be by Panamera's side. That's why she didn't want to get close to this boy. So she decided to look at him with a blank expression. It was obvious that Van was special. This was the opposite of what she wanted. He opened up with Panamera even though it was their first time meeting. He also had servants and comrades who respected him. He was younger than her, but he did so many things. She was sure his parents respected him because he was talented and had so many skills. But when she heard that Van's family didn't even care about him, she was shocked. She listened to him and watched the miracles he did with his magic despite it being considered useless. Her cheesy and jealous feelings changed to interest. Aristocrats only had hope for those with 4 elemental magic. That was the reason why she stopped using her magic when her mom ignored it. But she was not curious what would happen if she kept practicing her magic. Panamera now understood that he could build a base on an important strategic point, and Marquis aimed for the Graf's territory. Van responded that his father didn't know about this power. He chased him out when he realized that he had production magic. Panamera found his father's decision pretty stupid. If he had his power, he could probably expand his territory. But Van didn't expect him to know when he didn't even think this would be possible. He mentioned that they were going to continue building the fortress wall so she could delay her departure if she wanted. Panamera accepted his suggestion, as she didn't have anything else to do. As they walked around the village, Panamera asked so many questions, such as how he made the houses, if he was the only one who had production magic, and what kind of materials were used. She did understand a little but not entirely. Van concluded that the miscommunication had been fixed. Panamera stated that she needed to talk with him about marriage with Arut. Van wondered if this was the reason why she was here. Van said that this was a territory with a high apparition of magic animals appearing. They were going to keep building walls and improving the village, but it didn't mean that they needed to be married to someone for peace. That was what he needed to know. A marriage of convenience was not necessary. This village would keep improving, so Panamera was interested. She said that Arut was a girl whom he was firsthand taking care of. When Sir Ferdinand talked with her about her marriage, she was against it. Arut was expected to marry into a potentially hostile Marquis family, and her partner would be the youngest child, who at a young age went to the frontier of the feudal lord. She thought that Arut might not be happy. Vaughn agreed and added that she might die in the village due to bandits or monsters. That was the reason why she came here, because she thought of many reasons so she wouldn't have to give Arut away for marriage. That was the reason why she looked so grim from the beginning. It was because she wasn't ready to be abandoned once again. Van wondered if she mourned the future while drowning in her resolve. He could relate to her because he was in a similar situation. Unexpectedly, Panamera changed her mind. Even considering the happiness of Arut, she would accept a marriage proposal if it was him who would marry her. Even if he was younger, he was unsullied. He had the foresight and sobriety of mind that were not childlike, and he cared about subordinates. Even though he was sent to the border, his companions followed him. He turned his unfortunate fate upside down and found strength and wisdom in himself. Also, she added that he had power as a mage which no one would think was possible. She also admitted that if they were the same age, she would choose him as her husband. After receiving all those words from a beautiful woman like her, Van was so happy that she admired him, even though he was trying not to show emotions while also going crazy about her on the inside. She asked Arut if she agreed with her. She also said that she wouldn't make her choose. Arut wasn't sure about him. Van explained to her that he hadn't thought about marriage either, and if there was a reason that she couldn't go back, she could live in this village without marrying him. It was an important decision, so she needs to think about it better. Panamera claimed that he would gain advantages from marriage. He had developed the village in a short period. Even if he did nothing, rumors would reach people, and for several reasons this place would continue to develop. His power was a rare thing that could become a target for other countries, and he needed to keep improving to protect himself and his territory. Van asked if marriage with Arut would help him. She said that if he married her, he could expect support from Graf Ferdinand in the future, and support from her. By marrying her, he could also stop an attack from the Knight Order of Graf Ferdinand that would try to get back his territories. When he thought about it, the perfect form of a political marriage was to have few enemies and many allies, and if there were economic benefits, it would be even better. But there were no pluses for Graf Ferdinand. Sending Arut to marry him only makes sense if he came here because of a secret command given by his father. In the current situation, there was nothing to be gained from giving his daughter to him. He didn't even see any reason to have further contact with him. Panamera said that they were going to stay there for the night and he had a whole day to think about it. If he wanted to know more, he could talk with her or Arut. Van was shocked that they were going to stay for the night and showed a reaction that a 10-year-old boy would do. This made her laugh. Van asked if her soldiers would be here too, and she reminded him that they were on enemy territory, and for her, a weak woman, it was too dangerous, so she wanted their people to be here too. Van did not buy anything she said because she was one of the strongest people he had ever met. Panamera then asked Arut what they should do and suggested staying in Van's house. Arut was so embarrassed that she couldn't even say anything. Panamera apologized to Van and stated that Arut was still a kid, so this time it would be great if she stayed in the same room as her. She asked if there were rooms in this house where they could stay. Van decided to build a hostel right at that moment. They then went outside and he built a hostel for Panamera and the others. For the soldiers, he created a room for 4 people. They thought they would have to set up camp, so they were happy. They invited them for dinner and they had to rest in the house until the time came to leave. Till asked if the meat of a flaky wolf was good as a dish. Orto and his people were also hunting for mystic animals, but after the armored dragon, many animals came to this village. For some reason, the last time scaly wolves appeared, they emerged in packs and Van's team quickly killed them, so they had a lot of tasty meat. Till promised to do her best so that the food was tasty for his perfect marriage with Arut. Van wondered if she was fine with that, and she responded that as a person who spent a lot of time together with him, it was sad, but she believed that Arut would support him, and she would be happy to serve him as much as possible. Plus, if Van's wife was a good woman, then she would easily be beside him. Kamzan added that if he had the chance, he would suggest a more powerful person like Panamera. Espada commented that Viscount Panamera's words were true, and Graf wouldn't get anything from his marriage with Arut, and from the beginning, he sent her for marriage so his daughter couldn't use the 4 elemental magic. Their kingdom Scuderia had been expanding its territory for 5 years. Neighboring countries were already scared of them. That was the reason why the king didn't like conflict between his allies. There were 2 methods. Espada explained that expanding the territory by taking military action would impoverish them economically. Van could also take away their rights or sabotage them. Van firmly stated that even if the situation would change whether they get married or not, the more important thing was her choice. If Arut can't go back home, she could live in this village without worrying about the marriage, and if she wanted to go back, he would let her. They haven't had a chance to talk, so he was planning to talk to her during the dinner. In the next scene, they were having dinner, and Van started their conversation by asking if she liked food. He added that when they get more ingredients, they could cook something sweet. Arut was surprised that he talked to her. She stated that meat and salad with fruits were very tasty, making Till proud. Arut was getting used to it a little, but before she didn't even talk a lot without reason, so she was bumble. But it didn't look like Van looked at her with scorn. Even such a perfect person as Panamera recognized his outstanding qualities. She couldn't believe that she had the chance to meet such a person. Van then asked what her hobbies were. She liked cute things. With a big confidence, Van asked if she liked little animals. She said that she liked dolls, beautiful flowers, and animals that don't move. Van had not seen dolls yet, so he asked if she could show them next time. His immediacy and tranquility were like those of an adult man, but he was younger than her. And when she speaks calmly, he waits for her to finish her sentence. She said that the dolls were in the carriage so she could show them to him tomorrow. This made Van so happy and he thanked her. She had a joyful, stirring, and strange sensation. She was too shy to even look him in the eye, but Van continued to talk with him for some time. She got pretty used to him and wanted to start a dialogue herself. Throughout the whole dinner, she wanted to look into his eyes and ask about something. However, she couldn't get the courage to do that and the dinner was over. Panamera seemed to like this village and how it was so safe and peaceful. She also commented that the food was so tasty that she was wondering how he had so many ingredients and condiments. Plus, the citizens know him and respect him. Van agreed that Till cooked pretty well, and citizens were happy that the situation with the food was great. Panamera responded that if she was him, she would brag more about this village's prosperity. because then his achievements would be known outside the village. The village materials provided by the citizens built their enclosing walls and houses, so he just adapted. In the future, when this village has more than 1,000 people, then he will have a list of reasons to be proud. With that, they ended their conversation with Van. But he noticed that Arut seemed like she wanted to say something, so he asked. 5 minutes later, she finally bowed and thanked him for today. She added that she was tense because she thought he was someone that she needed to marry, but because he was a good person, she wasn't worried now. Lastly, she wished him a good night. Van was confused but still happy that he made a good impression. Arut knew she talked too fast in the end and went out before hearing an answer, so she was nervous that they would think of her as a weird and impolite person. She also couldn't find her room, but a woman led her. When she entered the room, Panamera was in her nightclothes and greeted her. She asked if the kids go through a boundary only because they had chemistry between them, and informed her that if she prepared a proposition, she could say it. Arut's face was so red that she looked like a tomato, so Panamera didn't insist on teasing her, and stated that they could stay with her for a couple more days if she wanted. She agreed to stay a little longer. She reminded Arut that they couldn't take care of them forever, so she suggested paying some gold coins for their stay here. Meanwhile, all Arut could think was tomorrow. She wanted to talk to him because she thought he would listen to her, and for the first time in a long time, she slept waiting for tomorrow to come. The next day arrived, and Van was informing the village people that the building of the fortress wall would be under the direction of Espada. It wasn't the first time, so he hoped they wouldn't have any trouble. The scope of the project was large, so he warned them to take care of their time and be careful not to get hurt. D and his team would be thankful to the people who provide materials. He then noticed that Ordo was watching them, so he asked what he would do, but he responded that he was just interested and would do nothing. He noticed last time citizens of the village lined up just like soldiers, and they were going to hunt for mystical animals again. Thanks to the new swords, it was too easy. Van said that they would get more if they got animal materials in bad condition, but good materials could be sold to Bell. Today was Friday, so he announced that today and tomorrow, using the meat that they had, they would have a barbecue. Hearing this news, a lot of citizens of the village who were quiet became partygoers. Panamera was also there and found his speech quite interesting. They were not a military, but it was a good way to improve morale. Van said that freedom was the one thing he could let them have. He then noticed Arut. She greeted him and stated that the weather was good today, which was a good thing. Van commented about how she was more powerful and energetic today and asked if she got tired yesterday after the journey. Arut was panicking on the inside, but she wanted to talk slowly. She wanted to see the world through Van's eyes, so she wanted to take a look at how he worked. In the next scene, they were going to deal with sewage while Panamera and Arut were watching them. The sewage pipes run deep underground in every building, so they had to regularly clean them and flush them with water from the moat. If they don't do this regularly, it would become unsanitary and diseases may spread. The sewage flows into underground cavities and eventually returns to the river. Suddenly, Abgalu people appeared and asked if he needed any help. Panamera and Arut were taken aback and confused. They explained that they live back here and Van gave them food. Priola was also there and introduced herself as Van's wife. Panamera and Arut were waiting for an explanation from him. He said that it was a misunderstanding, and he explained to her father too that they weren't even engaged or anything. Hearing this from Van, Lada Priola called him a bully and went away. The others were about to shame Van for bullying her, but when he said he got some delicious fruit today, they totally forgot about her. Van said that they needed their help because it was very difficult for them to pull the slabs out of the water. Abgalu people took care of this in a second. They also promised to take care of it themselves several times a day. Panamera was shocked that he could control Abgalu. Van said that there were several reasons, but they became residents here. The next was the castle wall under construction. The construction area also impressed Panamera. Van praised Espada for being fast. He informed him that the surface was fine, but the angles after that made it a little more difficult. He decided to draw a hexagonal line on the ground. He told Espada to build this wall, and he agreed. Espada immediately agreed to the out-of-the-box instructions. If the person in charge of drawing guidelines was incompetent, this project would be doomed. He learned trigonometry, but he didn't remember much, so he decided to center the village. Panamera asked how he was planning to draw the lines. She wanted to help because they could measure the length with a rope and connect several lines to draw an accurate diagram. First things first, they were going to measure the length of one side. Van noticed Arut and asked if she was okay without her bodyguards, and she nodded. In that case, while they monitored the surveying, they were going to work on strengthening the castle wall. Arut asked what that was exactly, so he explained that it was a ballista. It was a big bow and arrow, and they used it to protect the village. The top of the wall was made wider and the ballista was bigger. He made arrows as big as an adult's arm, and there were 2 tiers so that one ballista could fire 2 arrows in a row. He wanted to make a crossbow, but he didn't want to make a mistake the first time he made it. He was also a boy, so he didn't want to fail in front of two lovely girls. They tried it out with Kamshin, and as he wanted, everything went perfectly. Arut didn't expect it to have this much power for a bow. Van explained that it was because it was much stronger than a regular bow and arrow. Panamera came and asked what this loud noise was and thought it was a large magical beast attacking them. When Van explained to her, she was pretty impressed. She then asked if those ballistas also deployed on top of that wall. Van said they were a little different from this one, but there were over 100 on top of the defensive walls and they planned to prepare even more for the future. She started asking questions about how much time and money he spent and what materials he used. Van knew she was interested in this but refused to tell her because this was a military secret. Panamera was shocked. She promised to not ask for any more details and wanted to buy one ballista for any price, but Van smiled politely and stated that they were not selling it. Panamera was having a hard time believing him. With the astonishing development of this remote village, the many achievements that had made it possible to overturn the rules of production magic, and the deep respect and royalty even from different races, she felt a new wind that she hadn't felt in a long time. As Viscount Panamera Carrera Cayenne, she promised to form an official alliance with Van Nefertio, and today she was going to send a letter to the capital to report it. Normally alliances within the same country were made to receive protection, but she was going to emphasize that it was a 50-50 alliance. With this, she would be known as Van's ally among the nobles in the kingdom, and if she betrayed him, her life as a noble would be over. This was a rare opportunity for Van, so he gladly accepted to ally with her. With Van bowing to her, all the other soldiers and the maids bowed with him. Panamera stated that if he could lend her one of those ballistas, she would lend him 100 of her soldiers for 2 weeks. But if there was even one missing when they returned it, he would pay for it. Van was fine with it and asked if she would like to take a cart for transportation and arrows for loading. It looked quite heavy, so they would need a carriage for that. And as for the arrows, she said that they could make them from iron. Kamshin came and said that it would be good to have at least 1 or 2 of Van's arrows. He showed her a sword that Van made for him. It seemed that Kamshin admired Panamera and held some sort of emotional attachment towards her. It was interesting to discover a new side of Kamshin. Panamera said that she felt a little uneasy facing opponents equipped with armor and shields. Those were disposable items and they were her spares. She said that it would be great if she could make them, even if they were cheap or broken. Kamshin made his first attack. Panamera thought she hit it, but there was hardly any impact. But then she noticed that her sword was sliced in half. Everyone was shocked and confused. Panamera asked if he made that sword with iron, and Van explained that it was made of steel, but the way he made it was different. He also said that those bolts were just steel arrows with a bit sharper tip than normal, and they could pierce through 2 or 3 carapace dragons. Panamera and her soldiers were once again shocked by his talent. After hearing that, she had no other option but to buy those arrows. At night, we see Ordo and the others talking with Arut, telling her to take care of Van when they get married. If someone as beautiful as her were to marry into their village, they would be so happy. Arut seemed overwhelmed and embarrassed to even talk about this, but thankfully Van came and told them not to bother the guests. Even though Van was also embarrassed by their comfortable comments about them, he managed to keep a straight face and told them not to refill any alcohol. Van offered Arut to come sit with them. Now that the surveying was done, the construction should be finished in about a month. Arut asked if he meant the part of the wall facing the street would be finished in about a month, and Van confirmed her. She was also surprised that the whole thing was going to be completed. Normally, even if you create a wall of the earth using magic, it would just be a pile of dirt. For the time being, Van wanted to build a certain amount of walls before a merchant named Lanthalis arrived in the village. Arut wondered if that merchant was a dangerous person, but he smiled and simply responded that he wanted to surprise them completely. Panamera's underlings were competent and diligent. Then Espada needed time to build the foundation of the fortress. After the main materials were brought and the foundation was made by Espada, Van built ballistae on top of it and completed the fortress. At dinner time, he was dragged off by them. 2 weeks passed and the 2 triangular fortress walls were completed. Both the ordinary ballistae designs have been placed on them, and it had been twice as busy as usual, but it was more fun to build a village like that. While Panamera was talking about how he impressed her, all he could focus on was her big fortress, which was her large breasts. Van pulled it together and thanked her for helping the main part of the fortress. Later, he said that they could build houses for people, merchants, and adventurers who stop by or move here. Building something like this had always been Panamera's dream, but since it takes a lot of money and time, there was no way she could borrow money from a prince who just lost his territory. In the next battle, she didn't want to borrow his money so that he could use the military power in that territory freely. As they were chatting, the ground started shaking and Ortho told everyone that a dragon was coming here. Everyone was quite confused as to why there was a dragon in that remote area. The dragon was following Ortho and his team, so they were going to buy some time while everyone got back to the village. Van was shocked that he was using himself as the bait. They could fight in here, but he didn't know how they could win against a big dragon. This time he was not willing to let the villagers and others fall victim to such a thing. The others were waiting for Van's commands. Panamera decided to help because the dragon was about to come here. Van started giving his orders. He told Ortho to lure the dragon that way while they used the ballistae to fight back. He told everyone to prepare to enter the wall when Ortho and the other had entered, closed the gate, and went up the wall to help. Panamera also ordered her soldiers to escort Princess Arut to the village and bring 10 men, and she told the rest of the men to get on top of the wall. Arut looked even more scared than before and froze. Van acknowledged her fear and went to talk to her to comfort her. He said that even though the forest dragon was a strong opponent, they currently have those ballistae that would be supported by the 4-element mage Espada, and Panamera was also helping them. He told her that they may not have defeated it yet, but they weren't going to lose. Arut seemed relieved and she prayed for the best. Van let Till take care of Arut inside. Ortho told them not to close the gate as they were going to be there in a moment. Van ordered everyone to get the ballistae ready and be careful not to hit Ortho. Their first aim was to make it unable to fly, so they were going to hit the wings. As they ran away from the dragon with all their strength, Till fell and told them to go. They of course didn't listen to her and tried to catch the dragon's attention to buy her some time to get up and run away. Zara attacked the dragon, but of course it had no effect. He started running away while crying and screaming that they should leave him. But he was shocked that they listened to him and started running away in the opposite direction. Ortho said that he was the fastest runner and could survive, so he should let Puriel get to the fortress first, then he could catch up to them. As Zara still wasn't sure, he reminded him the Kusala's sacrifice. Van ordered them to shoot the ballistae when they were ready. Panamera said that they should leave it to her if they wanted to stop it, and she was dedicated to bringing it down in one blow. As expected from her, she was promoted to the knight level as her strength was recognized. Her magic characteristics were just as Van expected. There was no doubt that she was a supreme class 4-element mage. Panorama used her flame javelin power. However, even though it was a powerful attack, the dragon dodged it. They didn't wait and attacked with ballistae, but its eyes were good enough for it to dodge the bullets, and out of all those arrows, only 5 of them hit. At that speed, it should be slowing down the movements of its body, wings, and legs. Van didn't know how he would feel in their shoes, but Big Balliate took a long time to shoot. He ordered them to prepare for the second shot, and if the arrows were ready, he ordered them to fire it immediately. The second shot didn't damage it at all, but the first one seemed to inflict a fatal wound. Meanwhile, Orto, Puriel, and Zara made it to the gate. As they can't go full power against the dragon yet, Panamera uses her fire javelin again to buy some time while they all evacuate to the village. The attack was so powerful that Van saw real high-level fire magic for the first time in his life. If the opponent wasn't a dragon, the effect would be too powerful and terrifying. Panamera then heads to the village first to prepare a counterattack. While running, Van told everyone to run up to the village. The dragon was now standing on the fortress. Its wings were already damaged, so it could only run. Van was confident he could deal with it since he had beaten the armored lizard before. But that thing was different from the monsters in the area. Dee came and told him to go to the village while he stalled for time, but he refused because that was not an opponent he could take on alone. Dee did not insist on him and decided to prepare the battle gear. Suddenly, Espada came and started approaching the dragon while ignoring Van's screams. Van eventually stated that he wouldn't evacuate if he wasn't coming. Espada stopped but didn't turn back and stated that this would be troublesome. In that case, he wanted him to hold it off just once and then they would retreat. He told Van to go first, but Van was not leaving anywhere. The dragon started coming at them, but Espada made an attack that would get them some time. Van tried to make him run, but he was so slow because of his age. He was trying to convince him to evacuate in exchange for his favorite red wine. Espada promised to do his best. Kamshin told Van to lead the soldiers to protect the village while he took care of Espada. Returning to the village quickly despite running at full speed seemed difficult. Ortho and his partners have reached their limit, so he didn't know what he was supposed to do. Panamera called him and stated that the preparations here were completed. Van told the soldiers to prepare for their next shot. When Panamera asked what she should do, Van was shocked that she was asking for his orders. But he focused on the battle and told her that if the dragon reached the fort, hold it down using her magic like before, so that it wouldn't move, then fire the ballista. Panamera understood the order, but it was her first time using her magic to stop the enemy's movements. No problem with that because they were fighting with a literal dragon. The dragon started moving as it got out of the ruins, so Van warned everyone. Until Panamera was ready to use magic, he had to protect Espada and the others. He just needed a little bit more time, and Dee was there to give him that. His soldiers also told Van to leave it to them. Even though Van wasn't sure about it, they comforted him, saying that they were using the equipment Van made. Dee and his team started attacking the dragon. Even the first attack Dee made was enough to slice one of its toes. Seeing everyone giving their everything to buy time, Espada also made an attack. Kamsin and Espada started going to the village and Dee told everyone to retreat. Van couldn't believe they were moving like that despite their injuries. And the most impressive thing was that Dee, being the oldest, was the fastest. When the soldiers came close enough, Van called Panamera ready to accept any order. She used her fire spear. Ballistas were only firing volleys from the west side of the village. Countess arrows were used to defeat the dragon. Most of them missed, but the one that reached the dragon took a significant hit. Van ordered everyone to fire whatever was left. Even in its condition, the dragon dodged, protecting his head, but the arrows still penetrated the body, and the wounds were fatal. Van told the ballistas to prepare the next volleys and stand by, and then asked Dee to check the dragon. Dee approached the dragon carefully, and when he touched its head with his sword, the dragon growled at him, but Dee dodged it and killed the dragon with one slice. Van let his breath out with relief. He declared their win and ordered them to shoot for their triumph. Everyone started congratulating their win. Till and Arut came in worry, asking Van if he was okay, and he said that he'd just run a little with Espada. Dee and his two fighters managed to withstand the dragon's attack. They went inside and Van sat down to rest a bit. Panamera came and stated that his commands were precise, congratulating him on defeating his first dragon. Van couldn't imagine how it would have gone without her, Espada, and Dee. Panamera was impressed by his honesty, and she said that if that forest dragon attacked the prince's territory, the city would be half destroyed, and at the very least, parts of the city walls would collapse, and there would be hundreds of casualties. Van was surprised because if the royal mansion was in the city, it would be heavily protected. Panamera said that Dee and Espada would be remembered as heroes. Everyone was proud of themselves. But the most important thing for Panamera was that the attacks from those stupid ballistas could only knock off the dragon's scales. Van knew he had to increase its power. Panamera suggested starting the tribute to the dragon's conquest. First, she said that Dee had earned the title of Dragon Slayer, and secondly, Van, as the leader of the village, had earned the title of Warlord. Then Espada would also be asked to participate. Dee seemed so happy to be called Dragon Slayer. In the next chapter, Van announced to everyone that they had defeated the forest dragon and those who had defeated it would be rewarded. The one who would present the award was the current head of the Kayan noble family, Panamera Carla Kayan. The villagers were all ready to listen to her words. She stated that those who defeated the forest dragon had gathered in this place, consisting of knights and wizards who fought hard to protect this village. They successfully fended off threats that could have wiped out villages and village fortresses. However, thanks to their efforts, there were no casualties in this village. This was truly a remarkable achievement, and because of this achievement, they deserved an honorable mention. She first started with Dee, Deputy Chief Knight of the noble family Feltio. He was the one who took the forest dragon's head, and the one who decided the outcome of the big fight. He was the most experienced figure in the military and weapons sectors. Next, the esteemed four-element wizard Espada. He was a servant who was able to restrain the dragon's movements using his powerful magic and became the second figure in the fight. And when she announced the last name, the fourth son of the fertile noble family Van Ne Feltio, the crowd went wild and they all started screaming for him. Although he was only 8 years old, his knowledge, strategy, and wisdom allowed him to use magic that had never been seen in this world. He managed to build and strengthen the defenses of this village in a short period, and became the most important thing in the fight against the forest dragon. Thanks to his unbelievable strategy as well as being the ruler of the village, they managed to win that battle. As he saw the crowd screaming his name, Van's cheek turned red as he was embarrassed and he waved to them. With this, the award ceremony was over, but the festival started right after that. Panamera was trying out the sword that Van made and she was shocked at how sharp it was. She was still having a hard time that all of those were made by that little kid Van. He explained that it was just an ordinary sword he made with normal materials. She was also taken aback that he made hundreds of those weapons all by himself. Vam smiled politely and stated that she could request her own, but it would cost 5 gold coins. This time, thanks to the Panamera family and their 100 of strong army, they managed to collect materials quickly. The warehouse was overloaded, so he made an underground warehouse instead. The construction was half completed, and finally, the street merchants returned with the armored lizard using their caravan. When they arrived, Lango was shocked to see the new version of the village. He was asking questions to Bell, but he told him that there was something more urgent. Van came and greeted them. Lango informed Van that he had listed the help of the head of the trading firm, and there were 5 large caravans and 3 medium-sized ones. The mercenaries were escorted by 4 people besides him and assisted by 20 people and 5 slaves. Bell then offered to take them to the new warehouse. When the merchants saw the dragon's corpse on the floor, they were all shocked and panicked. Van thought they were overreacting, but it was a big forest dragon after all. Bell said that the dragon's scales, claws, fangs, eyeballs, and magic stones were all very good, and if they were auctioned off in the capital, the absolute lowest price would start at 100 platinum coins. He might even be able to get 150 platinum coins. Van did not expect the dragon to be worth tens of billions of yen. He asked what would be done after the auction, and Bell explained that it was an auction taking place in the capital, so high-priced items would definitely appear at the auction, and the Merchants Guild would participate in the event. With items as rare as that, there was no doubt they would be auctioned off for at least 150 platinum coins. If so, Van concluded that there must be transportation costs and selling costs. He asked if Bell and Rango could make a decent profit. Bell apologized as he realized this was too much for an 8-year-old child. A dumb noble family would blame the other party if they didn't get the advantage, but Van was now thinking of them thoroughly. He said that they would take somewhere between 3 and 5 platinum coins in profit from it. With that deal, it would be worth their effort. Van asked if making a trading firm would be hard. Bell didn't think he would ask that, so he just froze. The other merchants were all making promises to him. One of them stated that they were considering opening a branch store in this village since they were the largest merchant group in the kingdom. Van asked if that would be possible with the population. The man responded that merchants not only sell but also buy goods. They were reliable, and with the highest price, they would sell him the best items. Van asked how much that dragon would be worth, and they said 80 platinum. He asked how much they would sell it, and they said that they would deduct it through their sales service. Therefore, they also hoped to sell Armored Lizard as well. After that, they would send their members to come to visit this village next. Their conversation continued, and they were only interested in the outcome of this battle. Once this was done, their interest in the village would definitely die down. If monsters can be sold and they open a large store in this village, the merchants would cut into their profits, but then he would sell the forest dragon and armored lizards at a high price. They did not commit to this village, and their main focus was their profit. He thanked them and promised to consider it. They tried to convince him that they were too young to be merchants, but Van didn't listen to them and stated that they could have manipulated the dragon's price. 8 platinum coins were the right price. When Rango said it should be worth 100 platinum coins, the other merchants started coming at him. They said that there were no merchants who were not seeking big profits, and they reminded him of the bandits they might lurk on the roads. Bell stopped them and stated that they must settle this fairly. The point was the cost of sales and escort services must be covered by the sales profit. Even if the auction ended at the starting price, they would still make a huge profit. In addition, it was a basic skill of merchants to identify and select routes that were free from bandits. Hearing Bell's words, the old merchants were a lot angrier and they called him crazy. They said that almost no merchants come to this village in 1 year. 80 platinum coins were a good price in their opinion, and with this deal, every merchant member would receive at least 1 platinum coin. He offered to give him a high price this time in exchange for stopping talking. However, Van could still hear what he was saying, but still Van didn't think Bell would refuse this offer. But Bell didn't want to engage in such heinous behavior, and whether he wanted to deal with anyone or buy anything from anyone, they would do it honestly. He believed that they would get huge benefits with that mentality. One of the merchants joined their conversation and called him a bastard, and said that if the head merchant knew about this, they would be doomed. After saying all that, they left there as if Van didn't hear anything. He only knew good things about the Maori merchants even though he was from a noble family. Even if the customer was just a child who was not likely to become a regular customer, communication was still important to maintain relationships with existing customers. Van asked if they were worried about 1 platinum coin, and they said that there wasn't any problem. Even though they knew their identities, they didn't know what merchant group they were from. Rango didn't think they should be called true merchants. They were not interested in becoming members of a big merchant group like theirs, and they could trade independently. By hiring an escort, Bell could bring the items to the capital, and they have to register them with the guild before the auction. He added that there were 3 main requirements to join the auction. First, he needed to loan large sums of money for a trade union membership, then have original shop ownership, and then he would need support from the nobility. The first 2 conditions were no problem, but the last one was tacky. Rules in noble companies state that nobles have absolute legality rights. People who create a trading firm would be rewarded by the noblemen, and the nobles do nothing but gain enormous benefits. Van asked how much it would cost them to sell the dragon, or how much they wanted the profit percent of each sale to be. Bell was happy that he decided to go with them, and explained that a sales service charge was required. The amount may vary according to the market price. When Van asked which noble the mean merchant group worked with, those 2 brothers froze for a moment. They eventually stated that they worked with the ruler of this country, the Berliner nobility. As long as the firm was built, then there would be nobles recommending it to higher nobles. The company would grow stronger and bigger, and if they treat their customers well, they would be able to maintain their image and gain the backing of the nobles. But still, Having even royalty liking them was cheating for Van. Bell said that the Mary Corporation had shops in all the good locations in the country, and that way the knights were able to sell rare materials and slaves they subjugated there first. They also become every lord's recommendation. Rango mentioned that the first chief of the Mary Corporation, Mary Triumph, was said to be the mistress of an ancestral king. All the other companies always had their eyes on them. If someone were to set them up to be exposed, there might be a possibility that everyone would stop recommending them. Van asked if the Merchant Guild had connections with big organizations among tons of countries. Since their headquarters was in another country, they should be fine as long as they meet all their conditions. Bell approved him and added that they were able to establish their shop thanks to that. Bell was about to suggest his house for the recommendation, but Van stated that they couldn't use the connection of his house. His father cut ties with him and his brother holds no nobility. He only knew one noble that would help them, and it was Panamera as his only ally. He promised to try to get a word in with her, making the merchant brothers cry. They got so excited that they couldn't even hear him saying he was still just asking her. He considered Panamera too because this might be bad news for her. However, when he went to ask her, she didn't even question him and accepted. She said that a greenhorn noble like her wouldn't lose anything by just supporting two little companies, and they might be able to cause the royalties to waver if they could put pressure on them. Van forgot about the fact that the royalty had their problems. He wondered if he was thinking like that because he was a commoner. Panamera stated that she didn't have lands nor a knight order, so if he wanted to move up, she would have to do it in a flashy way to attract the commoners. The request this time would be a good deal to her because 100 private soldiers were able to slay a dragon, which could make a grand entrance into the palace. That was true because no one in the distant villages would think they had prepared to defeat a dragon. Van got so excited about this because if Panamera would get all the credits, his house wouldn't notice him, which is what he wanted. Panamera stated that it was a dragon subjugation without a lot of casualties and any prying guesses or intel would enter the higher nobles' radar. The materials, subjugation method, number of combatants, location, the victims, and everything would be known. If this deal gets big enough, the royal knights and others might get invited too. Van's excitement flew away as he realized that even if he declared that she was the one who defeated it, they would still investigate and find out it was him. His soul left his body just by thinking about what he would do if they called him back. She was surprised to see a kid who just left the house worrying a lot. She approached him and stated that she would teach him a way he wouldn't get involved in this situation. Van looked at her with curiosity, and she told him to just achieve nobility. He just has to become independent by becoming a noble himself, and he just needs to make a house. She was saying it was as simple as just building a new apartment. She made a role play about how she would say he was the one who defeated the dragon and she did absolutely nothing. He started panicking and told her that this would make him stand out, to which she responded with a simple question. What was the problem with that? The problem was that she was too close to him and her breasts were literally on Van's face, but he tried to keep calm. He wasn't sure about achieving nobility. He didn't know what his father would do, and the second and third sons might cause trouble for him, and becoming a noble before the king's eldest son would just attract attention. Panamera tried to convince him by saying that a barely 8-year-old boy subjugating a dragon would get him into the ranks. He would gain a huge sum of money and a budding corporation, which was nothing but a good result. But still, she understood why he was uneasy. She also gained a lot of enemies when she became a noble, and some people wanted to use her too. However, as she explained, she burned them all. She said that he should shoot his ballista at his enemies so that no one would go against him after he killed at least 10 of them. Hearing her ruthless words, Van realized how terrifying the world was. He then mentioned that if they made all the credit his, she wouldn't be able to make a name for herself. However, Panamera calmly responded to him, saying that she was not living a lifestyle where an 8-year-old had to be concerned about her. Van saw her scary presence and immediately took his words back. He was worrying about himself now and didn't want to be eaten by her. This made her laugh, and she told him to not worry as she wouldn't eat him in those 5 years. For him to grow strong, she would let him have the credit this time. It seemed like Van had only 5 years left. 2 days later, Bell offered 130 platinum coins to Van for the forest dragon, and he accepted it without even thinking. The negotiation was a success, and the condition Panamera gave him was that she get a share of any business he did once he had become a baron. When Rango came back to the capital, they sold the forest dragon and armadillo dragon as materials. Rango said that it seemed like that could catch up to them with how slow they were going. Bell wondered how they would explain this to the Merchant Guild empty-handed. Panamera was almost sure they were waiting in tears and would ask for help if they couldn't carry it. At that point, they would have no choice but to listen and sell it for 80 platinum coins. This sounded mean and reliable at the same time. He said that they could make the carriages and carry them, and they may ask Ortho's party to escort them. But Panamera stated that she was going to bring her army and go to the capital and reminded him to appeal to himself for the sake of his nobility, so he didn't need to worry about manpower and guards. Van happily thanked her and relied on her. Seeing his happiness for the first time, Panamera blushed and told him to not spew whatever he thought out of his mouth. Van almost had a heart attack seeing her cheeks get red. Belle asked if it would be okay as they needed a big carriage and a lot of horses to carry those dragons, but there was no problem for Van. He made a colossal platformed carriage with wooded blocks so it was super light, and they would also cover the materials in the cloth. And for the horses, Panamera offered to pull the carriage with the trained military horses. The merchants were still on their way, and they were still talking about Van and Belle. As they talked badly about them, they saw weird carriages and the knights coming towards them. They were both confused and scared about what they might be here and who sent them. It didn't look like a carriage for nobles either because it was way too big. As they went through next to them, they saw Viscount Cayenne and Rango. They were still confused as to why they would be together. One of them eventually realized that Belle and Rango would rise in the merchant guild if they received help from the nobles. At this rate, they were going to waste their effort delivering this to the border, and they would also suffer a loss. Their condition was the Armadillo with its 40 items, so if they went back empty-handed, they would lose their place as a merchant group. They started to think about a way to save themselves. After discussing some ideas, one of them stated that they would tell him that Belle and Rango stepped on that goodwill and they tricked them. They head back while praying that he would be convinced by that. The king of the Scuderia Kingdom, Dino N. Shora Bellinet, became the king at 16 and successfully revolutionized the military after barely reaching 20. Compared to his ancestors, he has gained power beyond imagination. He prevented betrayals, didn't put his relatives as a priority, removed many commanders, and turned all the officials below the ranking of vice commander into mighty warriors. He revolutionized his military by emphasizing strength. This revolution took time and much effort. Much blood was lost. As long as you were born a noble, you would have to become an officer or vice commander. So many incompetent sons lost their opportunities because of that. Because of that, houses like Count Feldenatz shrank in power, while houses like Marquis Feldenatz rose in power due to them being specialized in the military. With that said, His Majesty personally gave Panamera a noble rank, a competent one. He treated her nicely. Her family had had generations of knights and she was born in the capital. Once they knew she was capable of magic, she immediately entered the land of a count. She was trained like there was no tomorrow. She sacrificed sleep to study, and finally he became the captain of a small team. Her results were acknowledged and she became the captain of the Count's Knights at 16 years old. She had also accomplished a lot after that. She also joined the war against the kingdom of Yarnieta, and the team she was leading took the tide of the war. She then became a noble. They used her as a knight while using the excuse of wanting to give her a noble rank. His Majesty was happy with her achievements, so he granted her the rank of Viscount in just 6 years. He told her that he thought she would come to him herself to ask for a higher rank with her latest achievements, but she wanted him to give it to someone else. He asked where this individual was she was requesting for. Panamera said he was one of this kingdom's feudal lords, and he could not find a substitute, nor does he have a representative. He was also not able to come here. The king asked why she would recommend a feudal lord like that. She explained that it was for his future and all his unfound potential and achievements in the future. The king found it exciting that a militarian as reputable as her praised someone else, but he said that with a barren land that didn't even have knights and soldiers, he wondered how he accomplished anything. While he was interested, he was more suspicious of it. The moment Panamera said it was a dragon subjugation, everyone was shocked. They asked if it was a 4-elemental mage that was raised there, and she said that he was incompatible with magic even though his family was famous for it, so he was exiled by them. The king was so curious to learn who that man was. Panamera revealed that it was the son of Marquis Feltio, Van Nay Feltio. He was only 8 years old, but he was a hero who defeated a dragon. The king was surprised because the Marquis didn't report anything. Panamera said there was no report, but she had talked with the person in question and the villagers. It was a village with barely 100 people, and the village was being raided by thieves when he got there. He protected the village and eliminated the thieves with the few subordinates he had and some adventurers he hired. After that, he decided to reinforce the village with mud walls and also repaired the broken houses. They were having a hard time believing a 6-year-old boy accomplished this much. Panamera continued, saying that his manpower was only a bit over 100 villagers, the Marquis vice captain of the knights, 2 knights, an old mage, and 5 adventurers. Although she took part in the dragon subjugation, all she did was stop it in its tracks. The feudal lord Bon Nay Felio and Panamera defeated the dragon without a single causality. This was indeed hard to believe, so they asked if they had any evidence, and she said that they had the dragon's materials with an additional 40 armored lizards. They were taken aback by this amount of lizards because even the royal knights could not simply kill 40 armored lizards. Panamera decided that she couldn't convince them even with an audience this intense. So she said that she had inquired with the villagers who the young man commanded, and it matched with the reports, so all would be clear when the dragon was inspected. This seems suspicious because he didn't think she would let someone else have the credit, especially a child that could be easily manipulated. But the king didn't doubt Panamera. They asked if someone had given the young man his land, and she confirmed them. They said that he would also be at the scene of inspection in a few days, so there was no need to complicate this. Since the king believed her, the knight told her that if this was revealed to be some sort of plot, her rank would be confiscated and she would receive punishment. Panamera accepted any kind of punishment and stated that she would also humbly request the king's presence, and said the king might also give him new lands to defend for the sake of their kingdom. The king seemed so excited to meet with Van. The dragon was brought to the kingdom and the people were amazed. Panamera announced that Van Nijfeltio was now a baron and his rewards for slaying the forest dragons would be decided at a later date. They were now even more shocked because they knew Van. She also told Belle and Rango that they could negotiate with the guild and establish their business today. Rango was so excited and happy. Panamera asked if he was sure he wouldn't use his brother's name as well, but he said he should be happy that his little brother's name was being put out there. The next day, the new business and rumors of Van Nijfeltio as the new baron turned into the biggest news spread throughout the capital. Van was a hero who defeated a dragon somehow. A strong yet young swordsman cut off a dragon's head. That was so exaggerated even for a rumor. Her contributions have been covered over anyway, so she didn't care about that. This was interesting to Panamera too, so she was expecting him to be thankful to her. Panamera's party left the village a month and a half ago. Van had built tons of ballistas. Since they only had about 100 people, they wouldn't be using them all. His place had also become quite fancy and was moved to the center of the village for flexibility and beauty. Additionally, they have built 2 towers. Kamshin liked the Oringo Tower because he could see the streets, and Till liked Budu because they could see the lake. Dee saw Van and asked if he was going up Oringo Tower. Dee wanted to climb it as training, but since he was going to that tower, he decided to use Budu instead. Climbing the tower took 10 minutes and it drained them. Kamshin seemed okay, but Till and Van were exhausted. But when they finally arrived, they were blessed by the view. Van realized that this tower might be a bit too big since this village only had 100 people. Till said that considering their buildings and equipment, they couldn't call this a village. It might be a good idea to name this like a city at this point. Even though he rejected Van's village, the name was still going around, so he was sure she would mess around and name it Vanstown this time. Till wasn't even embarrassed by his scolding voice and said it was a good name. Van thought she was messing with him now. Kamshin called Van and told him to look at something. But Van couldn't see anything since Kamshin's vision was almost as good as the villagers now. He said that they didn't look like soldiers or adventurers, and there were a lot of children and old people. Even a slave trader was there. Van was shocked. Van decided to eat first since it would take them about an hour to get there. Till brought Van's favorite egg rolls and sandwich today. Thanks to Belle, the bread was high quality too. While they were eating, Alti came. While Panamera went back to her capital, Alti decided to stay and was living there for now. Van asked what was going on. He was about to throw away the honorifics because he thought he was talking to a kid as an adult. Since she was still a kid, she was cute, but there was no romantic feeling involved. When she acted like this, it made him want to pat her head. While he was thinking about how cute she was, Alti wanted him to just use Alti because it looked like it was hard on him. Van was okay with that and asked why she was there. She said that there were a lot of people coming this way and asked worriedly what they should do. They didn't have anything within the city walls and asked if they should bring them to his office. Van noticed that she was starting to speak more casually since she was getting used to him now, but she still gets frustrated sometimes. Van decided to talk at their house and make sure they were friendly first. Till mentioned that Ortho's party just went into the forest this morning. Van then told them to call Dee and Espada. Kamshin left there to inform the two. Van thought about training in between his construction jobs. He was really impressed by Kamshin's efforts. He goes through Dee's hellish training on its own, and even though he hasn't noticed yet, his sword skills are a step ahead of him. Ab and Lu are also trained together as rivals. He thought he might be missing something other than stamina. When Alti stated how amazing Kamshin was, Van realized that just like before, the popular kids in this world were those who could run fast and were athletic. Espada informed Van that they came from another village and that he would bring the representative to his room. A sweaty man came and asked if this was the Seat village. They thought they had arrived at the village of Seat but were shocked to see an amazing city. Van asked if Espada knew anything about this. Espada said that there used to be a person called Seat here and his name left a mark here, so this village was now called the Village of Seat. Van was shocked because he felt tricked as they told him that this village didn't have a name. Espada knew they kept quiet so they could name it Van's Village. Wondering what was wrong with this guy, Espada confirmed that this village was the village of Seat. Van asked what he needed from them, but he was still talking about how everything changed so much that it was hard to believe it. Van didn't have enough patience to wait for him, so he yelled what he was there for. The man said they were from a neighboring village and didn't have as many young people anymore, but the tax was still the same. They couldn't go on as they were, so they were here to ask whether they could live with the village of Seat. Migration sounded rough, but Van wondered why they were losing young people. He asked if they go out to earn money, but decided to stay there instead. The man responded that their younger generation didn't leave out of their own will. They were drafted to become soldiers. And without manpower, they couldn't afford the taxes, and the Count didn't care about a village in the borders like theirs. Van asked if he didn't think their villages were pretty far apart, and he said that it would take an adult 2 weeks to get here, and the reason they came here instead of the city was that they feared that the Count might punish them if he found them. So they decided to come to the Viscount's village instead. If the Count was a cautious person, he shouldn't have accepted them. It would become an act of taking his people for himself, and they would raise a fuss on their side, and they would definitely think badly of him. Nonetheless, these people risked their lives to get here. He would have liked to prevent any conflicts between his family and the Count, but he could not lend a hand to people in a bind like this. Van asked if all of them would live here, and informed him that he wouldn't tax them for now. They have food and shelter too, so they could work together for this village. There were 13 of them today, but they had 300 in total. He said that their family only gets one house, so he warned them not to expect too much. The man asked if he was sure he could treat them this well. He even offered one of his grandchildren, which annoyed Van. It made him pretty mad that people in this world would throw kids around like New Year's gifts. He knew the feudal lords always offer their daughters, but it still puts him off. Van said they would lend him some carriages and asked if 2 horses were enough. The man refused to take the horses, claiming that they could simply use the cows that were back there in their place. Van was interested now that he knew they had cows. The man said the Count left them for them to raise. They give birth to 5 or 6 calves every year, so they would all grow up within a year. In total, they have about 10 cows every year. This was awesome. Van said they could put their cows here when they get here, and Ortho would escort them. He assumed the village chef must be tired, so he offered him to rest here for today, but the man said he wasn't the chief. The people were shocked they got to sleep in a place like that. Some even said they felt like it was bigger than the feudal lord's mansion, but the others said the feudal lord might have lent his house to them. But Van was thinking how the furniture in his place was way better. Van interrupted them and said they would have a welcome feast for them and then guide them to their big bath. Van told Kamshin to tell their people and guide and cook for them. Alti asked what he was going to do with them, and Van realized that she was the Count's daughter. While he wasn't trying to be hostile, he did something bad. He said that they were the villagers from a nearby village, but they couldn't stay there, so they ran. And he was giving them some food and shelter for now. Alti seemed relieved and said they would have a good life in this village. Van was relieved that she didn't ask where they were from. As they strolled together, Van inquired about her 2 months here and if she wanted to move in. Alti said she would be happier with that. Van said they were still kids, so she could forget about the marriage and tell him what she wanted to do. That's the important part. Alti seemed worried and said she would love to marry him. Van asked if she wanted to get married, as if he was trying to make her even more embarrassed. He considered himself a gentleman, and a gentleman would never shame a lady, so he told her to forget about that. Alti said okay, and then noticed that he was walking weirdly. Van said it was nothing, but it was a happy walk since boys feel like they are on cloud 9 if they become popular. Ortho's team arrived at the village with the bloodstain all over their body. Ortho explained that they had found the entrance to a dungeon. Van was frozen for a bit because it was the one they didn't want to find, the one where you fight yellow birds, weird merchants, or small monsters. Espada leaned on Van and told him that since they had found the dungeon, they must report it immediately, with a message to the capital. Van asked if his father would grab them all if they didn't, and he said there was no doubt about it. Reporting it to the royal capital before letting anyone else know would be the best course of action. Van wanted to become a noble before all of this so his land could earn some fame as well, so they had no other choice. He started to think about making an adventurer guild branch and some armory stores here, and since they would all be nasty dudes, he might as well build a host club and a casino. Ortho was very sorry about this, but Van said there was nothing they could do since they had found it, and he would like to commission someone to grab a horse and report this to the capital. And he picked Ksura for this. He seemed uneasy about going alone, but when Van said he found the dungeon anyway with how nosy he was, he couldn't argue with that. Ortho agreed that Ksura was the best for this, but he wanted to follow as well. But Van wanted him to protect the villagers that were coming, and he offered 1 big gold coin as their reward. The moment they heard the gold coin, they gave up on Ksura and wished him good luck. Since Ksura looked sad, Van gave him the mithril dagger. When the others saw the dagger, They switched sides and wanted to go alone to the capital. With that, Ortho and Co went to escort the new villagers, and Kasura went to report to the royal capital. Kasura was so happy on his journey, enjoying the sunset with his dagger. He thought it was best to give him the dagger because it was so easy to use. He set up a camp at night, and the next day he continued. With how much he had been looking at the dagger, the trip to the capital went by so quickly. Now there were only a few more kilometers to the capital. Suddenly he saw a carriage attacked by orcs. No matter the type of orcs, they are always loyal to their desires, such as food, sleep, and sexual needs, plus the need to kill. He concluded that this one would either kill or rape whoever was inside the carriage. This would have been a lot harder for Kasura to handle, but thanks to the dagger, he thought this wasn't even enough for him. Kasura slashed the orcs' throats with ease, and he was even nice enough to warn the other orcs to stop for their own sake before killing them too. He was once again amazed by Van's custom-made mithril dagger. A little girl came out of the carriage and she thanked him for saving her. Her name was Furamilia Strast. She assumed he was someone who had a name of high status and asked for it. Kasura was panicked at first, but then he introduced himself as a good old adventurer. But judging by his clothes and that extraordinary dagger, she assumed he was someone with a big name and he must hide it for some reason. He was trying to explain to her, but she didn't seem to buy it. She said that she would be walking to the royal capital from here and she had nothing she could use to repay him for now. So she asked him to do that another day. Kasura said he was also heading to the capital and asked if she would like to get on his horse. She didn't want to cause him any more trouble, but Kasura was already putting her on the back of the horse, saying that the horse would prefer to have a lady like her rather than him. Furamilia was touched and said it had been a long time since someone called her a lady because she was 30 years old. Kasura didn't believe her because she didn't even look older than 20. He asked where she was heading, and she said that the escort who was supposed to guide her ran away. He asked what she had come to the capital for. She said that her father, who was a viscount, died in a battle and their house was taken, and their name had fallen, so she was looking for a house that might be hiring maids. She was embarrassed to tell this truth, but Kasura wasn't the type of person to judge her, so he just assumed she was a freelancer now. He said that he was the same and he was currently living in a village near the border and invited her. He added that there would be a suitable job for her as well. Plus, he was guarding that place so she wouldn't regret it. Furamilia seemed happy to meet Kasura and accepted his invitation. They went to the Adventurers Guild and reported that a dungeon had been discovered near the border under Marquis Feltio. After that, the adventurers were informed that the dungeon was near the border, the same village that reported subjugating a forest dragon and armored lizards. The feudal lord Van Ne Feltio was a new baron, and their guild was going to make preparations to build a branch there, so they would be buying materials at a 20% increase. Additionally, anyone who could do the dungeon's mapping, which is acknowledged to be useful, was going to be rewarded. The adventurers were so happy about this news and started celebrating, plus bothering Kasura with tons of questions about both Van and the dungeon. Kasura grabbed Furamilia and said they would be leaving now. They wandered around in the capital until it was time to leave. And even though they told the adventurers not to follow them, they ended up following. Kasura paid for her food and room at the inn, and Furamilia saw that she had done nothing but accept his assistance. Kasura said it was nothing and asked if she was sure about coming with him. Furamilia said it had been a while since she could smile from the bottom of her heart, and it was all thanks to Kasura. Kasura was happy to hear that and started talking about Van. He said that he was a really smart kid and she could expect good stuff from him. Furamilia couldn't wait to meet him and see the village he had been talking about. Meanwhile, Ortho and his team were bringing the neighboring village people to Van's village. Ortho assumed Kasura went straight to the capital. Puriel warned them to be alert of what was around them because the forest dragon case only happened because they were talking non-stop. Ortho tried to object to her, but she told him not to argue with her. They were surprised by their numbers, but they were even more surprised when they said everyone wanted to leave. Ortho had seen tons of people die without knowing what the outside world was like, yet they kept on persevering, and the entire village just continued to starve to death. It wasn't that easy to just decide to leave your village. He noticed a woman wobbling for a while, but she didn't ride the carriage because she had more stamina than those who were in it. He asked if she was okay, and she said that she objected to this plan, and she thought they were heading to a village much worse than theirs. Ortho responded that although it's closer to the borders, that border village was heaven and it was way better than any city. She didn't get what he meant, but when he said they finally arrived and showed the village walls, they were all taken aback. The villagers were welcomed by a whole fest and lots of smiley faces, including Van. Since Van assumed they were all tired, he invited them to deepen their bonds with this barbecue and sleep in their designated houses. The village chief Spellboo was thankful for him accepting them. Van introduced himself and then told Ortho that he saved everyone there. He said that it was normal for adventurers. Puriel asked if this meat was from another monster, and he said that 10 of these huge evil boars had popped up yesterday. He was kind of panicked when he saw them coming from the lake. Orthos said that they were troublesome when they got close to their magic, they would be paralyzed and wouldn't be able to move. But their ballista killed it in one hit. A little kid from the other village asked if he could eat, and Van told him to wait as he liked. He told Till to get him the soup he mentioned and roast some small-sized meat for him. They offered everyone lots of food and they were all so surprised and happy. Some even started crying as they ate because they had not had any truly delicious meat in such a long time. Seeing their happiness, Van and his villagers were also as happy as them. Van was glad he put in the effort to make enough houses and barbecue for 300 people. Before they got here, the supporting pillar, Van did the most. All he needed to do now were some estimates and the outskirts for some adventurers to come as they liked. He wanted to build a small town outside the village. It wasn't made with safety in mind, but for them to rest up and go into the dungeon, so he thought they would be a good spot. He wanted to prevent crimes and anyone suspicious from entering the village. He was going to make a town that would take about a month. Ortho was listening to him in shock, of course. He explained that the town would fit about 400 people, and would have an image suitable for travelers and adventurers to live in. The buildings would be tall, and one of them would keep at least tens of people. 10 of those, 5 buildings for business, and about 2 or 3 inns. The walls would be about 500 meters in length. Including the 3 ballistas aiming towards it, they would have 15 in ballistas to defend it. He would lock them so no one could aim at the ground with them. Espada mentioned that the Adventurer Guild's branch would also be built there, so he suggested preparing that town for them. These were just his mere words, but he wondered if Van would be the one running those shops, inns, and ration stores. Van said they would profit if they were the ones running it, and they would need to do a lot more, but it would be worth it. In that case, Espada said he should have a representative in mind. Van would be in the village, so they need someone to take care of the town. He asked if they would need someone if he took over the shops, or if he meant all the shopkeepers would also be the town's managers, because in that case they could leave it to multiple people instead of just one person. Espada said they might even set up their night army. Luckily, D was here, and they also had enough for transportation and facilities. This meant that they would have to decide how to maintain the safety of the town. There would be a lot of people who try and steal, and someone with a malicious heart might show up too. Van wanted to do everything. They would leave a few stores to themselves and let Bell and Rango run the rest. They would scout for adventurers to join their night army. He wanted to leave the representative role to Espada. Espada said he would also be the manager and hire some talents. He asked if they could have one army for both the village and the town. Van was confident because D would be Seat Village's Seat Army and the new one would be the Espada Army. Espada figured out what he was trying to do and asked if that was the payback. Van wondered how the party was going and hoped that no one was fighting. Arut came and wanted to go together, but Van wanted to talk to some fellow villagers and it might be bad manners, so he asked if she would like to eat some meat while they talked. Till and Kamshin watched them with excitement in their face and followed them around while they ate and walked. Van noticed that they didn't have enough seats, so he asked someone with strength if he could bring them 3 chairs. The man got so excited and brought 3 chairs immediately. When he did that, Van told him that he would be happy if he could join Seat's night army that was in the making. He asked him to consider it for a moment, and then left him alone. He was feeling proud because he already found one member and he was ahead of Espafa now. He decided to recruit anyone who might look like a warrior. The villagers approached Van and asked if there was anything they could do. Van was happy because the more people, the more manpower. He asked them to help out with the stores and inns that were about to be opened for business. They said they didn't mind farming, but they had never run a business before. He told them to not worry because they would be dealing with the customers, organizing goods, and cleaning. They had tons of jobs, so they could try something they thought they could do. He also told them that they would pay accordingly for everyone here. An old man said this village was in great shape and he thought he was in the wrong place until Van came in. They never thought they could get to live a life where they could smile and have fun. So they hoped they could all smile together. Van said this was just a start and they would work together to make every day fun. The village was at the stage where they were getting an increase in the numbers of citizens and visitors while all they did was try their best to survive. Van smiled and revealed that they were going to make another town right now. In the next scene, they gathered more villagers. The villagers with strength were setting up 1 kilometer away from the village and building a new town for the adventurers. Espada said it was crooked, so they told them to pull the rope to the right. As for the new elders, Van had them take care of the cows on the farm, which they were used to. The Abgalis would feed them water and grass. The newcomer kids were happy to be living in new homes, and they were also excited by huge walls. They were adventuring around the village with the kids in Seat. He was happy that there were more people now. D came and asked if he needed more logs. Van wanted 100 more and said he would have them here today. Van realized that D was already making a night squad, but they said that Espada had already invited them, and they had already signed the entry contract. Van realized that he had a late start, but fortunately some of them haven't signed anything, so he had a few of them. He planned to have Dee as the captain and Ab and Lou as the vices. He could make a 20-man squad, but that was so little. He then decided to calm down and give Espada a break. Kamshin came and informed Van that a horse and a medium-sized carriage appeared, and it was Kusara. They were still pretty far, but he could see quite several carriages behind them. Van thanked him and pointed out that he shouldn't be able to see them if they were pretty far. Till and Alti were unable to see it either. When they got closer, they noticed a woman right next to him. Till assumed it could be that he saved her from danger, and she fell in love with him. Alti was so amazed. Even Kamshin was impressed, and he said Kusara was amazing. He was agile and could detect enemies, spot traps, and disarm them. Plus, his sword skills were unique too. He added that Kusara was good at stone throwing, knife throwing, and using bows. While they were talking about Kusara, he arrived and said he would like it if he could stop bad-mouthing him so loudly. Van immediately acted like he didn't say anything and welcomed him, asking who was next to him. He said that he met her somewhere and she said she had nowhere to go, so he brought her here. The villager count was still going up and he asked if they were okay with that. When Van said they had gotten 300 new residents, he was shocked. Till introduced herself and Van to Familia, and Familia introduced herself too. She said that she was attacked by orcs near the capital, and Kusara saved her, then he brought her here. It was just as Till expected. Kusara tried to be humble and said it was nothing special, but Familia said to her, he was better than any hero from any tale. Till and Alti were so excited. Van then remembered that he had a whole group behind him, and when he turned to them, he saw adventurers hungry for work. Kusara apologized and explained that when he reported to the guild, all these money-hungry idiots followed him. Since they could scare the villagers, Kusara suggested letting them camp outside the village, but that wouldn't do, as Van wanted their favor and needed them to say good things about their village. He told them to have them wait for a second, and he would have inns ready soon and would set up the minimum amount of defense for them. He told Kusara to go back to the village to rest. He asked what they were going to do, and Van said Ortho was exploring the dungeon, but it was in a bad spot, so they couldn't build a camp. Kusara said it was his time to shine. He decided to get some rest today and show off his skills tomorrow. While Kusara was waving at them, Familia excused herself by bowing, proving that she was a noble lady. When Familia left, Alti said that lady was the lady of the Stratos Viscount house. Van asked if she knew her, and she said that she had heard about her before. The male aristocrat was deceased and the deteriorating family finally crumbled. Till felt really bad because she looked about the same age as her. But when Alti said she heard she was in her 30s, they were all shocked. Van realized that they should always avoid the topic of a woman's age. He said they should continue building the town. Putting the shops aside, for now he wanted to have temporary shelter and defensive walls ready. They would like a wall that could at least stop a medium-sized monster. That way everyone could flee further into the village if bad news came. While he was talking, the adventurers came and started bullying them. They told them that even if the village was close, it was still dangerous outside and called them brats. They started hitting on Till and Alti. Van was frozen at first by how stupid they were. He then asked if he was worried about them. Till said they were odd but kind people, but Van found them scary. The others came and explained that the White Oath all had bad exteriors, but they were still good people. He figured that the D-Day people call their party Wild Oath, but the others really got curious as to why they were here. Van said they would return to the village the moment they saw anything, so they would be fine. They heard from the guild that the feudal lord was quite the young viscount and had quite a number of people and money. Van wondered who that viscount was because he had never heard of such a young and competent noble before. The man then asked what he was playing, and Van responded that he was waiting for wood. He showed what they had left, and even though it would look a bit bad, he showed what he could do. He created a temporary fence for today's safety. Everyone was shocked. Van thought they were reacting that way because they thought it wasn't reliable at all. So he explained that it was stronger than it looked and would hold on for at least a week. They corrected him by saying that this was incredible magic. Dee said they had brought 30 logs with them, and when he called Van's name, the adventurers realized that this kid was Van Nyfeltio. Dee got mad and took out his sword, asking the one who said that to fight with him. Even Van was scared. The adventurers dared him, but Dee literally cut their swords with one swing. With that, the name of the strongest dragon-slaying knight, Dee had his name spread around the adventurers the moment they arrived. They were scared and strapless, and they greeted him whenever he showed up. Dee didn't forget to warn them anytime about doing anything bad. Van didn't know what to feel about this, but he hoped it would make the place safer. Apparently, people were interested in Van, both as a kid and as a leader. They circled him and asked lots of questions, such as the reason he was at the borders. He explained that he was exiled from his house. Ortho came while they were talking and asked when they had so much competition. Van asked when he came back. He explained that they stuck around the dungeon too long, but they finally went back there. He wondered how many adventurers there were here and assumed Kusara was back. Van mentioned the beautiful lady he brought with him. As the whole team was in shock, Kusara and Familia arrived. He came to check on him since they were late. He said that the guild staff would reach here for the investigations within a day, so they would also go scout it out tomorrow. Familia called his name, and he explained why she was with him and introduced her to his adventure friends. Kusara said he wanted to go and help them, but since they were back, he wouldn't need to. He then excused himself to go to their inn and left there. Ortho and the others were so shocked that they asked if they were in a dream. Van explained that he saved her gallantly from some orcs, so she treated him like a hero. The truth was the truth, so Van accepted them already and even started to consider making them a smaller house beside them. Their reaction required him to wait because they regretted their decisions and got jealous of Kusara. When they were a bit calmer, Van asked how the dungeon was. Curiel said the monsters inside didn't really come outside and the entrance was close to a cliff, so it was placed somewhere pretty dangerous even for a forest. And it was pretty deep. The entrance was small, enough for only 2 people to enter. They wanted to make sure whether the cave was really a dungeon, so they entered it once. There was 1 flight of stairs leading to the first floor and pillars beside the entrance, as well as the usual walls, ceiling, and even light crystals. It was undoubtedly a dungeon. Van asked if it was far from here and she said that it was an hour by carriage, plus 2 to 3 hours inside the forest. Van was surprised, but Peel said all dungeons were pretty similar in that aspect. The borders have strong monsters, so they could gather somewhere far from nature. Van reasoned that no one would establish a village in a hazardous area, but he still believed that a village could be built nearby in the future. Puriel mentioned that the surroundings of the dungeon have huge monsters, and the natural construct itself was dangerous, so even though they could make small camps, it was impossible to build an actual base there. Van was confused by Puriel's attitude while she was saying those things. She said that Van could do a perfect base for them. Van said the forest was dangerous and he couldn't bring his ballistas with him. But Puriel promised to protect him and said they had been to dungeons countless times, so it wouldn't be dangerous with them there. She was suspiciously insisting on this one, but he was dedicated to not falling for it. He wanted to be a shut-in after all. He said that if they could carry him to the entrance, add afternoon naps and desserts, and let her bring his servants Till, Kamshin, and Alte, he could do it. He said that Dee and Espada would be busy building the town, so they were staying, and he wanted tons of guards as well. He was sure Puriel wouldn't be able to meet his request and would be scared, but Puriel smiled and said they would prepare for it by tomorrow. While Van was shocked, Puriel turned to Ortho and informed him that they were bringing Van with them, and they should get ready. Even the servants who were listening to them were shocked. In the next scene, it had been 3.5 hours after they departed from the village. Van had never thought he would go to a dungeon, but now he was going there to make a base while enjoying the scenery. Alti said the air was good too, so it felt pleasant, but the shaking was something they couldn't ignore. The dungeon was their target, and they somehow gathered 50 adventurers for it. They were sitting inside a shrine platform made by Van that was really light, but the shaking was terrible. It felt like they could be flung outside at any second. They had even seen the caverns and cliffs after the forest. They were so noisy, and their corpses were also part of the scenery now. When Van said he didn't think it would come to this, Kamshin stared at him and reminded him that he told him they would be going to a dungeon. Van had to deal with Kamshin too. But as for the girls, they were enjoying it like a road trip. It was indeed a magnificent view for them. The mountains in the distance were also beautiful, and they looked bigger than the clouds. They were even amazed by a flying monster, but all Van could think was how scary it was. They would turn into prey if it attacked them, so he brought his crossbow with him just in case. He heard his name and peeked outside. He immediately told everyone to stop when he saw 2 bricks of wood literally used as a bridge. They were confused as to why Van was telling them to stop because they were almost there. Van screamed, ordering them to put them in a wider spot. He was shocked by the lack of safety measures those adventurers had. Even steeplejacks would be scary. He realized that adventurers never think about safety. Van told everyone to fix this spot where people might die with just one wrong step. When he said danger and risk management, the adventurers looked at each other and wondered if they had a place like that. He ordered them to kneel and reflect on what they had been thinking. While they were trying to understand what was wrong, Van asked Kusara why he was jumping over there and asked what would happen if he kicked that log with full force right now. He told everyone that even someone as nimble as Kusara might fall if the logs were to roll or break. So he asked them to either secure the bridge or find a better path. He asked them what they thought they should do with this log, and one of them responded that they should line lots of them up. He ordered them to kneel again because it seemed they only had one brain cell and told them that the right answer was to make a sturdy bridge. He reminded them to be sure to confirm their safety before crossing, but they objected, saying that they didn't have that much free time. However, when Van said he wouldn't make the base if they complained, they got to work right away. Van looked at the entrance of the dungeon. It was surrounded by cliffs and hills. There wasn't a big spot around the entrance either. It was somewhat of a problem to make a base in that tight space. Till asked what was wrong, but before he could answer, a man came and said they needed suggestions on some essential facilities. When Van asked what they needed, he said a hostess club, and immediately got rejected. He told them to kneel and started explaining that a casino wasn't something they would need. It was a difficult ship to sail. He first started by creating a door to the dungeon, a system set to get water from the rivers. The base would be beside the entrance, which had a perfect slope so they could build a connection to it. Alti asked if he was sure this was how he wanted to build it, and he confirmed her. They worked for 4 hours non-stop. 4 hours later, the base was built. The moment Van permitted it to go inside, everyone rushed it. On the ground floor, there was a resting area and storage. The first floor had a canteen and 3 sleeping rooms, and the third and fourth floor had 6 sleeping rooms. This building was built with the center of gravity in mind, so it was really tough. They could do whatever they wanted with the terrace. The adventurers were shocked by the luxury. There were 4 toilets on each floor and tanks to catch the rain on the rooftop. There was a filtering net inside it, so it should be good to use. However, he cautioned them against drinking it. He left the management to Ortho and told him to guide them well. And about the door to the dungeon, he asked if they should keep it closed when possible, or if they could decide on its opening time. Ortho suggested discussing that with the others because there were night divers. But it was true they should keep it closed if there was no one inside. The door should buy some time if something bad comes out. The insides were made of mithril, so it should be pretty strong. Van said it should hold a forest dragon for a day. There were also steel cells behind the windows, so they shouldn't worry about monsters. They should have more windows for better lighting inside, but he warned him to be sure to close them when they were unneeded. It was afternoon already, so he told everyone that they should head back now, and ordered them to prepare the escorts. They were surprised because it was still bright. They wanted to get some sleep before heading back, but Van told them that he had a curfew, and Espada would be mad at him. It was funny for the adventurers to see the Lord getting scolded by his own servant, and they realized that even though he was a lord, he was still a kid. Van got serious and told them that there was no dinner if they were too slow. This made them laugh even more now, and they even mocked him. While continuing their way, they once again encountered a cliff. Van couldn't believe they walked on this thing. Since it was too dangerous, they made 2 more bridges before getting out of the forest. In the end, they got back to the village when the sun went down. And when they arrived, he and Espada were waiting for them. And Espada was smiling for the first time. He always had his poker face on, so Van was terrified. Espada wanted to talk to him for a minute, but he was so scared that he wanted the others' help, but they couldn't even look at Espada's face. Till forced herself to come with him, but Kamshin and Alti refused. Van begged Ortho to help him because this happened because of them. Ortho had to explain to them that they were the cause of this whole thing. But Espada told him to be quiet and grabbed Van, and he didn't stop lecturing until the middle of the night. The next scene was on the capital's outskirts, a slave market. A girl that can't use the 4 elements would be required to do chores, sing, and dance, while hunters like this one girl would be left behind. As more and more slaves left, the ones left faced harsher treatment. The people in there were talking about a man buying all the slaves here. The other said he had always been spoiled, and there were some here who could have gotten the mistress position too. They would all be going to the furthest spot in the country, spending the rest of their lives in some mountain mining. The girl wondered if she would ever find her purpose in life or just die here. At the Seat village, a caravan arrived at the adventurers' town. Rango was back, and there were a lot of people and horses too. A long-needed brother reunion was inside Van's head, but instead, Bell asked Rango how much he sold them for. Rango said 180 platinum coins. After thinking about the future, he brought 150 debt slaves, and they were all healthy in their 20s or younger. Bell was shocked that he paid 3 platina for each one. They cost him 8 big gold coins. After the auction at Maria's guild, he went to talk about the carriages, but they apologized to him for some reason. They said it would be troublesome if they couldn't trade with Van, so they were willing to cut half of the price for them. Van welcomed Rango and mentioned how there were a lot of people. Rango said he would introduce them later and first gave him 130 platinum coins as they promised. Van thanked him and gave the coins to Till. Rango also gave him 2 platinum coins as his part of the benefit. He said that from now on, they would give him a part of their profit. Van thanked him. Rango said he would sell the monster materials all to him first. While he was thinking that this was a win-win situation, Rango said Van was now officially a baron. Van was so surprised and shocked because with this, no matter what his father said, he wouldn't be able to forcefully take this land back and also wouldn't be able to take away his position as a feudal lord. Kamshin asked if Panamera was not coming there herself, and Rango responded that the Viscount would rush here after reporting with the Count. To be frank, instead of her count's faction, she wanted to side up with Van as she thought that cultivating this land would be more interesting. Van didn't expect her to want to live here. He liked her as a person, but not as his superior, so this was a tough situation to be in. In the next scene, they were interviewing the village square. They started by introducing them to people that were better than the average person. A former viscount's daughter, a former knight, and a knight's daughter. Someone with the wind attribute, someone with the earth attribute, and a former B-rank adventurer. The daughter of a collapsed company director and a former knight from an enemy country. Since the two of them were good with wind and earth respectively, Van asked what magic they could use. The blonde girl said she could make mud walls, and the other one could defeat wolves and orcs in one hit. The blonde one was from a commercial background, so he asked if she had done accounting and sales work before. She said she ran a store since she was little. They wanted to recruit her if Van was okay too. Van wondered if it was because she was very beautiful. Belle said if they were to open an armory store at the entrance of the adventurer town Espa, they would be able to sell well, and then they would leave the store over there to the other girl. Next up was a former noble child. Her name was Vita, and Van asked if she would like to work at the inn, the Knights, or the Lord's Lobby, and if she were to become a cleaner, she would have a kind and cute maid called Till to teach her the ropes. She said that she would like to work as a cleaner then. Van found her so cute. She reminded him of the maid Harem back in his former house. He thought he should take her as his secretary, but Till alone would be enough as his secretary. Suddenly, the girl felt like something was wrong. They were working to the bone, barely getting anything to eat, so she wasn't sure why she was feeling that way. But when Van said he would have them all be knights for this town, she was shocked. She thought slaves like them couldn't become knights. Van said there were tons of monsters here, so it was dangerous, but he thought he could have them protect the villagers. He hoped they would do their job well. She had never heard of people rising from slavery to knighthood, so she got why the others were so happy. But one thing she was curious about was the reason this was happening. Van seemed relieved now that they had decided where everyone was working. The knights kneeled for him and said they would be in his care. Van corrected them, saying that he wasn't trying to enslave them and just thought they could work for the village first, make themselves comfortable, and try to find a goal they could strive for. For that purpose, Van wanted everyone to try their best together. The girl's eyes teared up and she said that they were slaves, but he made it sound like they could live normally. Van responded that he was the lord of this village and they were all people of this place, so they should take care of each other. The girl finally found her purpose in life. Whatever the job was, as long as she could come back to this village, she was going to try her best. Van announced that those who were helping to build the inn and those who were compatible with magic go to Espada. Former knights, mercenaries, and adventurers would go to D. With the increase in numbers, Seat Village had become busy. For the bards, dancers, and instrument players, they were planning to build a pub and hire them in the future. And he asked those who were experienced in agriculture to help in the fields. Kids that were younger than 10 should help the villagers with laundry and get an education. The Belgian Association was teaching the newbies about business, and they split the carriages into 3 teams to expand their routes. Bell was heading to the royal capital, while Rango stayed behind. And for the 50-ish people here, he decided to train them to become Seat's first Holy Knight squad and teach them how to use the strongest automatic crossbow. He told them that they would become the archers for their knight squad. Even though she had previously used a bow, the girl said she thought many of the others hadn't. So she questioned why she was chosen. She was the former hunter Bora. Van explained that firstly for those who were experienced, second for those with sharp eyes, and thirdly for those who have a small build, and would find it difficult to use swords and armor. Bora said bows can't be underestimated as well. She saw some delicate kids here, so it might be tough if they didn't have enough strength in their arms. Van was interested that there was a person with an opinion and agreed with her. He said he would have the weakest looking one, 11-year-old Bolte, to try it. He made a light bow and gave it to her to try it out. He told her to relax her shoulders and try aiming at the forest. Bolte's first try was pretty successful. He then turned to the others and asked if they would all like to try their latest bow. Bora was so excited, so she tried it first. She was amazed by how good this bow was, and said they could fight a large-class monster with this. Van said they had ballistas for them, so there was no need for that. Bora got excited and wanted to see the ballista too. Van realized that she might be bad news. He was thinking of making someone who was experienced the captain, but he started to doubt if Bora could do it. For precautions, he decided to leave the team to Kamshin. He was sure Kamshin would be able to do it. With that said, he started researching the crossbows. He and Till were with Van too. While working on the crossbows, Van was talkative. He was considering everything that could make it easier for the user. Alti watched him talk to himself while working and said he looked like he was having lots of fun right now. Van admitted that this was fun. Having to think about mechanics and politics was the hardest for him. Whoever thought of these first was amazing for Van. He created the bow, but it stuck. He thought there might be a part in these that needs something elastic. The stick was stuck and wouldn't turn. He decided to check if every part was going to be okay if turned into metal. Alti seemed surprised and kind of talked to herself, wondering if Van could make mistakes as well. But Van heard her and looked, so she got embarrassed and apologized right away. Van laughed and said he always makes mistakes, and this magic here was the only thing he was proud of himself. Alti didn't agree with him and said his swordsmanship and studies were all wonderful talents, while she thought she had nothing going for her, and she said she was jealous. Van said he could introduce her to a demonic executive and a captain. If she received the same lessons as her, she would be at the same level as him. This for some reason made her giggle. Van wondered what magic she was compatible with, but even though it was a normal question, she started shaking and seemed pretty nervous. Till noticed her too and said Van wouldn't force her to answer, and if it was too hard she could not answer. But she said she was going to say it. She revealed that she was compatible with puppetry magic. This was the magic that all royalty feared. Kamshin's thievery magic, brainwashing magic, and puppetry magic. It was magic for cowardly sinners. This impression was engraved into people's minds by one incident that happened in the past. If someone were to attempt an assassination on royalty, and even if a mage was there to determine the method, they would always suspect someone was controlling the perpetrator, and some would think that someone with puppetry magic was controlling them. It was quite the comparison to his useless magic. He could understand why Alti was hesitant to talk about her magic. Van asked what she could do with that magic of hers. He said he would like to see it if it was okay. It would be too hard on her to just hide it for her entire life. She started to panic because it was dangerous magic, but Van was trying his best to help her, so he said he would like to see it. He wanted to make her feel proud of her own magic. Alti took out the doll she brought with her. She said she was unsure about it, so she never showed it to him. Alti then used her power and the doll stood up. He wondered if she could make it move, and she said yes. The doll started dancing, and Van was shocked by the intricate movements, zero wasted effort, and an actual dance. It looked like an actual human dancing. There hasn't been a single weird movement from it. When it was over, she expressed how amazing her magic was. He said that this magic was full of potential. Till also found it amazing too. She had never seen such amazing magic and wondered if Alti could dance as well as the tool. When she said she could also dance but was better at making the doll dance, Van was shocked because this meant she could move that doll better than her own body. This was way too amazing. She could make things move exactly the way she wanted, so it was obvious that she could also make this in a bad way. But from her attitude, he figured that no one told her that her magic could also be used for good things. Till had an excellent idea, and she said if they could make cute dolls for Alti, and if they put dolls and let them dance around during festivals, the villagers would be happy. Alti said she could make them move if they were the same size as her, and she has never tried anything bigger than that. They immediately wanted to try it out, so Van made an interesting doll for Alti. Till had quite a lot of questions about this. First, she wondered why it was holding a sword and a shield in a dress. Van excitedly explained that while this doll might look good dancing in a dress, he thought he might as well add a sword and shield to it. The doll could protect them in case of an emergency. Both the body and weapons were made from mithril. Usually a big shield would be made from wood or leather, but since this was a mithril doll, it could handle the weight. He laughed, saying that he would have to gather more mithril for the dolls. When he finished his explanation, Alti started chucking for the first time, surprising them. Van asked if he should remove the shield, thinking that was the reason she was laughing. But this wasn't the reason why she laughed. Till suggested having it fight with an umbrella instead, and Alti agreed. Till panicked and said she didn't have to force herself to agree with him. Van and Alti looked at each other and laughed together. This was the first time Alti had laughed from the bottom of her heart. After the pleasant moment, they started moving the doll. The doll Alti was controlling was so beautiful that anyone would notice whether it was minor or simple movements. When Van turned to Alti to compliment her on how beautiful the dance was, he saw her struggling to breathe and stood up. She was holding her chest and stumbled. Till and Van immediately held her, asking worriedly if she was okay. She barely could say that she had used too much mana. She had to use more than she usually needed to make it move, so it was just a mana deficiency. They made her lie down and brought some water. Van's mana pool was not normal, so he didn't consider this beforehand. He wondered if it was because of the mithril and decided to find a way to cut down the mana usage required. But still, even though Alti was feeling weak, she felt great mentally. And it was all thanks to Van and Till. She always thought she had zero value in life, but from now on, she decided to try looking for things she could do. Till and Van both smiled at her with relief. Van asked if she would like to do some research on her magic because he believed they would figure out what they could do with it on the way. Alti didn't even need to smile when her face was expressing how happy she was with this question. In the next scene, they make the right decision. And the dolls are now made with wooden blocks, and they have shown them to the villagers. Van asked if she was ready to move them all, and she said yes. Compared to moving mithril dolls, This would feel like moving a sheet of paper, so she was confident. It seemed like wooden dolls wouldn't take too much of a toll on her, and he wondered if metal dolls would be harder to circulate mana in. He looked at Alti and thought about how this type of magic could make a huge difference depending on the caster, and Alti understood that at the age of 10. He wondered if she was viewing herself now, and if she would accept it. When he saw Alti waiting for him to start the dance, Van announced that they would show the dance of the mascot of Seat Village, a standing doll by Miss Alti. The moment the dolls started moving, the villagers were shocked by how it was moving like they were alive. Unfortunately, some of them figured out that it was puppetry magic used for assassinations, but Van told them not to think this was over when the doll had only shown one trick because Alti's doll could dance like they had never seen before. The more Van complimented Alti's skills, Alti got the courage and moved the dolls like a pro. After witnessing the wooden doll's skilled movements, the villagers stopped talking altogether. When it was over, Alti looked at the villagers who were all shocked and received the biggest applause from them. She heard them saying how amazing the moves were and how they had never seen a dance that beautiful, and even children were requesting her to move the doll again. Seeing them wanting more of her magic made her think how amazing Van was. She thought her power was so scary and evil before, and now getting all that applause and compliments made her tear up. She went to Van and hugged him while crying her eyes out. After Van's words, she believed that she might come to like her magic and herself. Van hugged her back and said she should perform during dinner time too, because they would be happy. From now on, Van made a goal to himself that Alti would laugh a lot more. He promised to make her a stage 2 and wanted her to tell him the dresses she liked and he would let the dolls wear them. He was saying and doing those things just to make her happy and laugh. And with that, they end the night on a high note. Meanwhile, a man appeared, and he was very excited because of Van. Van was so tired that night from working too much. It was their tea time, and Alti asked if he had ever collapsed from using too much of his mana. He said he hadn't, and Alti started to think of herself, asking if she might have a lot less mana. Till leaned on her and said she didn't have to compare herself to Van. As mana can't be measured by the eye, those who were compatible with any of the 4 elements would have to be tested, such as how many mid-level and high-level spells they could use or how long they could continuously use low-level spells. Some were compatible with all 4 elements, yet only able to use low-level spells. Being able to use high-level spelling was already an incredible thing like Panameras and Espadas. Van was using spells equal to high-level spells over long periods. Alti had never heard of someone like that before. Van said she was exaggerating because Espada had also worked with him for just as long. But that was because he would rest after using a single high-level spell. While they didn't know how big his mana pool was, anyone could tell he was abnormal after looking at this village. If the best mage in the world were to do what he did, they would collapse within 2 hours. Since they had all been telling him the same thing, Van figured that everyone should be super surprised then. Espada calmly responded that they were already surprised every single time. In the next scene, we went back to a month ago. The king told the first Prince Celgio to run the country in his place for 3 months. Celgio asked if this was about the new Baron boy, and told him that he could send anyone if it was for confirmation. He was also confused as to why they would have the Prime Minister Apeltadu with them. Apelta said he can't have His Majesty enjoying a rare occasion like this alone, and if he can't leave the capital, then His Majesty wouldn't be allowed outside as well. The king said this had nothing to do with him. He usually called people here, but he was the lord of a small village, so there was a high chance that he wouldn't be able to leave his village. That was the reason why he was heading there himself. Celgio said they could leave the scouts alone, but the countries around them were all very active as of late. It was as if any of them would just rush in anytime soon. They must be gauging the lords around the borders. Those who might have powers and nobles or lords, a strong squat, and mages were a must-have, which was why a village of 100 people slaying a dragon had a lord he must meet with his own 2 eyes. Clehio was as smart as his father. He had a good appearance and was liked by the people, so he would become a good lord if he could raise him well, but he pursues too much peace. He had never thought of fighting for something with another country. Sure, it would be nice if the world's peaceful. However, with every country stacking its strength and aiming for a chance, they didn't have time to stay their hands or they would be swallowed in an instant. Becoming strong was the same as protecting their own lands. He then realized that Pista was the same age as this new lord. He was interested in swords and horses, but not a shred of politics, so the new lord might become a good inspiration for him. He said it would be a good experience for him, so he took him too. The king then turned to Celgio and told him that when he was his age, he had already been working himself to the bone as king. These 3 months would be an eye-opener for him, and he told him to do his best as the acting king. And with that, they left the capital. It had been a while since he had gone on a long journey. It reminded him of his younger days when he didn't have to prepare himself to leave as a king and just acted for himself. Since they can't disguise some of the vessels following them, they can't really observe how the common folks act in their daily lives. Everyone kneeled the moment they saw the royal crest. putting their faces on the ground. While some remained standing, they would just be forced to kneel by those around them anyway. While it was understandable, it was boring to the king. He didn't plan to rule the lands with terror. The royals losing their respect would lower their authority, but those who were scheming would stop hiding their tails as well. Drawing the line between nobles and commoners and ruling over them with the law and strict management, punishing those who committed crimes was important. But the king was focusing on the boring side of the story. But he was still unable to see how a village could just slay a dragon. Pista summoned his father and told him to look over there. When they saw the giant wall of the Seat village, they were all shocked. Apelta mentioned that this place should have had nothing but small shacks, but he was certain that everything here was built at an incredible pace. The king asked what he was trying to say, and he told him exactly what he wanted. It was interesting. That made the king laugh pleasantly and agree with Apelta. He couldn't wait to have a look at that fort and learn how they did it. Meanwhile, inside the village, it was even more interesting than that fort. Alti was making the dolls dance again. People were applauding, the kids were playing with her dolls, and she was happy. It is super popular among the villagers now. Though it was only a little, she was glad she got help, and she didn't forget to add that she was so happy. Alti worked delicately with the doll every day. It was a form of practice for her. They could see that everyone was more interested than scared of it. He was glad that the villagers were able to accept it. Suddenly, Van was informed that an extraordinary carriage had arrived. When they looked at them from the fort, they noticed how it stood out. Ortho said they might have sent an official to confirm their subjugation of the dragon. Puriel and Kusara said it might be paperwork for his promotion or about the dungeon. The villagers were also curious to know about their visitors. They even wondered if there would be another barbecue once he became a baron. Van heard them and said they would only do it at night. They got so excited and started to prepare the grill for roasting even though it was too early. Van realized that he should make it so they could only live on vegetables and fruits. Espada informed Van that they had confirmed the royal crest on the carriage and suggested that they bring all of their subordinates. They brought the mechanical crossbow team, Seat Village's knights and Espada's knights. He could easily see over 100 people here. Their gears were mixed with multiple materials for optimization like wooden blocks and iron. Their gear was also prepared for multiple scenarios: iron shield, mithril sword, and long spear. Van was so confident and excited to welcome the officer and decided to provide them his time as Van the Baron generously. They opened the gate, and Van was shocked by the first person he saw in front of him. It was a Panamera. Van noticed that she could suppress that dynamite body of hers and was shocked. Panamera noticed Van's face, said it was a weak reaction, and asked if he find another woman. Van said he was so surprised and said he had become closer to Alti. Alti's lively presence appeared, and she welcomed Panamera. While Alti was asking questions about how she had been, Panamera was so shocked by the light in her face and eyes that she had to ask Van what he had done to her, and if he could use brainwashing spells. Van explained that she lacked confidence in her own magic, so he told her how amazing her magic was. Panamera was now serious because it was her first time hearing Alti talking about her magic. She held her cute face and said how awesome it was. She then started laughing and called Van the seducer. She decided to save the fun for later. She then told him to lower his head like the Baron, because he was in front of his majesty. Van was shocked. He was so nervous while the king was walking towards him and didn't want to believe it because they were on the furthest border from the royal capital. But it was indeed real. King Dino Enshora introduced himself first as the king of Scudelia and told Van that he was now a part of the noble society, so he wanted him to show him how he could benefit his land. With his knowledge and power, he was looking forward to his country's development. While kneeling, Van could only ask himself why the king was here. He didn't even know if the king could leave the capital. King Dino said he had also heard that Van had discovered a dungeon, and added that the investment squat from the guild should be here soon. So he should tell them everything too. The guild's report would go to the king, so he warned him not to lie. And lastly, he told him that his subjugation of the forest dragon and the items he auctioned were all done well. A knight should have come here in his stead, but since the reports were so abnormal this time, he had to confirm them himself, and he was going to have him answer every question. When he finished his talk, he asked if Van had any objections. Van raised his head and swore that he would answer everything with sincerity, but he had something he would like the king to promise him. The king was surprised by both his objection and the way he responded, which was not likely for a kid. Van said he would tell him everything, but he would think it was a lie if he didn't believe him. So he wanted him to promise he would try his best to believe. Apelta was giggling while the king couldn't help but express his surprise. He then promised to try believing him. That is the end of the recap at chapter 32.3. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.